Hello, hello. Happy election night, Ryan Grimm. How's it going?
It goes. How you guys doing?
Doing good. I brought along a little special guest here, Kyle.
I'm wearing the douchiest sunglasses I could possibly find. I got my Moet right here, which we went into the wine store. I said, "What's the most expensive champagne you have?"
The finest that King George County, Virginia has to offer.
And then also, I got the Victory
Oh, boy.
cigars, and I'm gonna be an insufferable smug prick when he wins. That's what's gonna happen,
And
I'm
you're
super
also
excited for it.
making clips for people in case he actually loses.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, that is
If
true.
if
Yeah.
he
Going
loses,
all in.
if he loses, I'm already cooked for showing what I got planned here.
Yeah,
Well, it is
that
certainly a
champagne will
big
come in
night.
handy.
Yeah, exactly. Drown your sorrows.
Totally, yeah. And I'll
We-
smoke both cigars to the face and
Oh.
get cancer and die.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Anyway, very big night. And not just in Michigan, but we got obviously the marquee race, Abdul versus Haley Stevens. The polling has been very strong for Abdul down the stretch. Double-digit leads in every poll that we have seen in the past week or so. Seems like he's got a lot of momentum in spite of the $80 million that was spent against him. You got a bunch of other races. I know you guys at Drop Site, Ryan, did a bit of a breakdown of some of the big races tonight. Also, Corey Bush out in Missouri rematch against Wesley Bell. What are some of the ones you're taking a look at?
Well, the most important race of the night, of course, is in Washington State, and that is Marie Gluesenkamp Perez fighting for her life.
Forgot
in a
she
pri-
had a primary challenger.
in a primary
Didn't you
out
date
there.
her once?
What's that?
Didn't you date her once?
I have never. I don't even know if I've met her, let alone
Oh.
dated
Where'd
her.
you get that from?
Did you? Was she a former wife of yours? I'm hearing. Is that?
No, I was never married to her either. He is facing both. It's a top two state, so she's facing a Republican to her right, and then another progressive Democrat to her left. So we'll see about that one. But Corey Bush up against Wesley Bell again in St. Louis. So we'll be getting those returns tonight. And then we got Will Lawrence, who I also have not dated, who's running in mid-Michigan against two kind of centrist Democrats. He's the one he ran as an anti-genocide candidate, anti-data center candidate. The bench, that like Liz Smith group, the majority Dems that also supported Mallory McMorrow, they have a candidate in there. This guy Mazdim, he was like a Navy SEAL who carried around the nuclear football for Obama, which it's a very kind of West Wing idea of who the candidate should be, because it sounds kind of cool, but then you're like, what is that act like? If I was sitting with the guy and having a conversation, that would be interesting. I'd like to hear some stories about that, but what does that tell me at all about?
It's like the sort of candidates that Rahm Emanuel was recruiting. That's what it's giving to me, like the sort of mid 2000s Democratic playbook there.
And he had millions in support from like basically Washington-based super PACs, and he's probably going to lose to Will Lawrence in mid-Michigan. That's in currently a red district represented by this guy Tom Barrett, who's vulnerable. So it's a real chance for he's the co-founder of Sunrise. It's a real chance for a populist to beat to win in a primary against millions of dollars, and then have a chance to actually beat the Republican to kind of prove that point that you can actually do that running as somebody with a conscience and that stands for something. And it really matters here, I think, because anyone can say they're against data centers, although his opponents won't even say they're against them because they're getting a lot of money from tech. But even if you're a normal politician who says they're against it, people don't believe you. But if you're also willing to stand up, against the genocide, it's like, okay, this guy might actually
be for real. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got this bizarre one, this guy, Sri Thanadar, who is one of the strangest incumbents, one of the strangest people ever.
Yes.
Who, before he initially ran for office, talked to a consultant, was like, so which political party do you think I should run in? And was basically persuaded like, oh, this Bernie Sanders thing is hot. You should position yourself that way. He is being challenged by Donovan McKinney, who's backed by Justice Democrats, other groups as well. Looks like he's got a really strong shot to unseat Sri. And one of the funny things there is word on the street is that his incumbent Democrats, usually they would be, adamantly opposed any sort of primary challenge, certainly one from the left. This guy's so odd. They're kind of like, if he lost, maybe it would be the worst thing in the world on this one.
You've had very kind of corporate establishment CBC members who came out and campaigned for Donovan McKinney. It's still an uphill climb for him, but like Joyce Beatty, who was a former chair of the CBC, not one to kind of take risks, but she's like, if you've seen the guy at all, you're like, what is happening here? Like, how's this?
Kyle has to run in a little bit, but what do you think? Like, why are you so hyped for tonight? What's on the line?
It's the best position we've been in on the left in a very, very long time. Like, you go down the list for
maybe ever.
Maybe. FDR's era.
FDR,
when FDR, at FDR's peak, he had 80% of the House and 80% of the Senate, and he won 4 presidential races in a row, to the point where Republicans were like, let's do term limits so that this can't happen again. But tonight, you go race for race, and in basically every race except one, my preferred candidate is ahead significantly. And like in the betting markets, massively up there. The only one where that's not maybe necessarily the case is the Cori Bush race. I'm not sure, maybe Ryan can speak to why that is in that race, that she's not doing as well as the other left-wing candidates. But in virtually every race, I'm like, holy crap, we could do this thing tonight. Like, we're going to be the standard bearers.
Yeah.
And then, as I've always said, if you run on left-wing policies in a general, you bait the right into attacking you on your strengths. You make them say, like, no, I don't want a living wage. No, I don't want universal health care. And that makes them weaker and makes us stronger. And so, I'm just very excited, because it could be like us in the driver's seat for the first time in a long time. And like, let us at him is all I have to say.
Yeah. And you can't be like, oh, it's just New York City. Oh, it's just Philadelphia. Oh, it's just Denver. Oh, it's just California. No, this is Michigan.
Right.
It is the quintessential swing state. And so Abdul has already proved, he ran a much more statewide campaign than Haley Stevens. Basically, like, posted up in Detroit. Her landing page for volunteer events throughout the state was completely empty. It was all just manufactured. It was all these tens of millions of dollars that was dropped in. So not only is it Michigan, so then it becomes, for the fall, it's so incredibly important, because, if Abdul wins, then he goes on to lose in the general election, then that is going to be weaponized against the left of, oh, it's nice, this will work in a college town, but you can't do this in a swing state. So it's going to continue to be very high stakes. But the money involved here, I think, also makes it so important, because if AIPAC gets the sense, they apparently just have limitless money. So if they get the sense that if they go and drop $80 million in any race that they want, that they can get their chosen candidate, they will do that. But if they try to do that in this race and they completely fall on their face and fail, then other candidates are going to look around at that and say, taking this AIPAC money, like going in that big money direction, that doesn't really seem to be a smart political move. Because I do think, my sense is that it got to a point where that money backfired, where it became an issue itself in the race. So that then when people are being served ads on TV, or when they're online, or mailers stacked up in their doorways, I've seen those pictures too, it's not persuading them to vote for Haley Stevens. It's reminding them that she's the corporate candidate, and they're pissed off about it.
Yeah, and it's this fascinating moment where, as long as you have a threshold amount of money like Abdul El-Sayed had, and you can get your name out, and people knew him as the Detroit's public health guy, and then Wayne County's public health guy. Was he? I don't know if was he ever statewide public health. I don't remember, but he ran in 2018 for governor. Plus, he had enough money and momentum that people knew who he was. So he's in the game. And then on top of that, I think you're right. There's some races where there's so much money spent that it literally, you see it and you're like, I don't like that person. Like that, I'm angry that I'm seeing this ad. I'm angry that these billionaires from out of the state or out of the country think that they can come in here and basically buy the seat. And so I'm angry at them. I'm angry at the ads, and I'm angry at the person that they're supporting, and I'm going to vote against them because they've made my decision for me. It's not often that happens, but it's also not often that you drop $80 million in a race.
Mhm.
Like the
Mhm.
Democratic National Committee has, I think, $15 million cash on hand. And Haley Stevens got $80 million in support against a Democrat. So
Jesus.
it's just an ungodly amount of money.
And she ran such a cynical campaign too. Like every like even all the Obama ads. I mean, even that is so pandering. Like, oh, I need to drive a score with Black voters. They love Obama, right? Let me pretend like I'm endorsed by Obama.
It's actually kind of evil. Like it's plain evil because it's like fraudulent.
Yeah.
You know, like he didn't endorse you. Stop pretending like he endorsed you.
We saw one of her supporters, like an elected official, not just some rando, come out and make just completely racist and bigoted comments about Abdul. Haley herself never came out and said anything about it. You know, the smear attacks against Abdul, framing him as some secret sexist because he criticized a Michelle Obama program in an op-ed one time. Obviously trying to play into the trope of like, oh, his name's Abdul, he's Muslim. You know how those Muslims are with women. It's just so blatant and so gross. And then on the other hand, there's no content to her campaign. Like Abdul's tagline is money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. Very specific. He's got plans for all of them. People know what he stands for. They know what he's going to do. What is Haley Stevens going to do if she's
stick
elected
it
to the Senate?
to him? We're going to stick it to him. That's what it is.
I literally don't know. You know, it was leaked today, some message she put out to her her campaign team that, you know, great job and I'm so proud of you, blah, blah, blah. Not a word about like when we get to Washington, we're going to be able to do this and we're going to be able to do that. And I think that is such a big problem for centrists that no one knows what they believe in, why they want to be in office, what they're going to do. It's all just based on, well, did you hear Gretchen Whitmer endorse me? And did you see Jim Clyburn came to town and endorsed me? And did you know that Gary Peters endorsed me? But okay, who are you? Like, what is it that you want to do when you ultimately get there?
It's like tax credits. That's what they run on. That's what the centrists run on. We're going to do a tax credit and we're going to stick it to them.
Yeah, her whole bio was the role that she played as a Treasury staffer in the auto rescue. But the fact that Abdul al-Sayed got the UAW endorsement was probably the nail in her coffin. Like
yeah,
that was a dark week or two for her. But like, I don't know if they've ever lost I highly doubt the UAW has ever lost a statewide Democratic primary. Like,
I don't think they have. I think I heard that they hadn't. Yeah. Abdul also was responsible
how are you gonna beat
for
them?
helping. Abdul also was responsible for helping wipe out, I believe it's 300,000 people's medical debt. Which that alone, like when we had him on Crystal Kyle and Friends and he said that, I like had to pause and say, can you repeat what you just said? And he's like, yeah, we wiped out the medical debt for a ridiculously high number of people. I think it's 300,000, but people can fact check me on that. And like, that's incredible. Like, do you have to have any idea like what that does for a person, for a family? And of course, all you have to do is you buy it up for literally like pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how it works. Like they'll take pennies on the dollar. And so he's another example like Zoran is of like the government can actually do good stuff. If they want to do good stuff and they fight to do the good stuff, they can do good stuff. And that's why the centrists are panicking because they pretend the opposite. It's always like, oh, we can do like tweaks around the edges, but nothing too serious, nothing too big. And then along comes Zoran, along comes somebody like Abdul, and they prove like, no, government used to be able to do things that help you. And now we're actually going to bring that back.
Babe, what do you think? How many like never Abdul Democrats are we going to have?
7. It's 7 of them.
Specifically.
I'm serious. Like it's not going to be a thing. It's really not. I mean, it's going to be a thing like Hillary Scholten. Yes.
Right. At the elected level though.
Oh, at the elected level, that's where most of them are going to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where, and it's going to be like psycho-Zionists and, you know, people who are taking a bunch of money from lobbyists and special interests and big money donors.
And
but
also,
among the people, among the voters, like I would say upwards of 85% to 90% of the Democratic primary voters who vote for Haley Stevens will vote for Abdul.
Yeah. And among the electeds, like it's also going to be people who are psycho-Zionists, but also kind of racist. Like I think James Carville fits in that bucket, frankly, because he was on defending Graham Plattner, who has the, you know, very similar views with regard to Israel. But with Abdul, he says he doesn't want to be in the party with him.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the difference?
And Hassan too. He said the same thing about Hassan. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, remember Carville was saying, oh, I actually think Bernie was right about a bunch of stuff after the 2024 election. So let me get this straight. Bernie says the same stuff that Abdul says and Hassan says, but you're out of the party if it's Hassan and Abdul. Gee, I wonder what the difference is between those people.
Yeah.
Really hard to figure out.
Yeah. Last thing before you, I know, have to do your own stuff. And I think
Last
David,
thing before I smoke this
before
bad boy.
you get prepared for your night. And David Stewart is standing by also, who is in Michigan. So we want to get him on in just a minute. But talk a little bit about how central Israel has become and why you think that it matters so much to Democratic primary voters.
I think the Democratic Party is packed full of young voters. Young voters all watched on social media a live stream of a genocide where toddlers were getting blown up and innocent civilians were getting shot in the face and people were being starved to death and World Central Kitchen workers were being bombed and UN workers were being bombed. And they really felt this moment of immense despair where it was like, if you can't even tell me the truth about this, what are we doing here? What kind of Twilight Zone world are we living in where we elect people and they like have nothing to say about the fact that we're paying for the psychotic mass murder of an entire group of people? This is insane. And so, there's some younger people who decided to run and they ran on an anti-genocide message, and to say that it like clicked with all the younger voters and the Democratic voters is an understatement. Like, people like us have been waiting for this moment for so long. Give me somebody who runs for office who actually believes in the same values I believe in, and they're going to fight to make the world a better place. And like, the easiest litmus test of all should be, hey, should we pay to mass murder toddlers? No, I'm going to go with no. I think that's a bad idea. It shouldn't be a difficult test to pass. But unfortunately, because of Israel lobby money and because of some like principled hardcore Zionism, there was an uphill battle. But now here we are. And it looks like the Democratic Party is effectively being taken over by people who are serious about making the world a better place.
And by that, you mean anti-Semites. That's what Got it. All right. Thanks, babe.
Yep, I'll take
Have
off.
fun.
Bye,
See you
guys.
later.
Hi, David. Bye, David.
Hi, see ya.
Enjoy those cigars.
I realize I look like I'm in like a hostage situation. So just as
No, you're good.
just to prove that I'm in Michigan, I'm drinking Kalamazoo's wonderful IPA.
There it
actually
is.
challenges Colorado's IPA. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that, but Bell's IPA is pretty damn good.
You make a good politician. When you're in the state, you tell them like
Drink the state's
their
IPA.
IPAs.
That's
You
right.
gotta
This was
take on
not
the
paid for
Michigan
by Bell's
accent,
Brewery.
though.
Just to be
To
clear, I did not
pander
do a Michigan
effectively.
accent. Sorry, my
need
bad.
You gotta work that in a little bit into your routine here. David Stewart of Lever News, great to see you, sir. You're on the ground now. You interviewed Abdul before. Just talk a little bit. What are some of the dynamics that stand out to you in this race? One thing that has galvanized people. You also just have kind of like a Gen Z and millennial coming of age moment too, where millennials have long been the most progressive generation, and now they're, grown-ups and with kids and more reliable voters and more, politically active in a reliable manner. So, I mean, I think that's part of it too, is that now you have this young cohort from Gen Z up through millennial that has an increasing amount of political power and has very progressive views on most issues.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I also think it can't be overstated how good a candidate Abdul is, both in profile and on the stump. I mean, this is a guy who has run statewide before, has held a major public office. I mean, it wasn't an elected office, but to be the public health department of Wayne County is a big deal in Michigan. So I do think there's like a candidate selection issue here, where the progressive populist candidate here is a really talented candidate and has been through a statewide election before. And obviously, as you said earlier, I mean, what he's campaigning on is so crystal clear. The three planks of his motto, right? Money out of politics, Medicare for all. I'm getting them out of order. Money out of politics, Medicare for all, money in your pocket, right? Mm-hmm. Like that just, it's so simple for people to understand. And then you overlay it with his message about national security, foreign policy, the genocide in Gaza, et cetera, and all of the money coming in that he is able to then make the money an issue unto itself, right? I mean, it is kind of a perfect storm and a perfect moment for a candidate like this. And listen, I've been out in Western Michigan. I actually randomly out here on a family vacation. We've been all over the region near Grand Rapids, and honest to God, we've seen a bunch of Abdul signs, even in sort of Republican areas. I haven't seen any evidence, and maybe this means nothing. Maybe this means something. I don't know, the lawn sign wars, but I literally haven't seen any evidence of a Haley Stevens campaign. Like not any, I haven't seen one sign, nothing, like nothing.
Well, David, I've got a great Grand Rapids question for you, because there actually was some evidence of Haley Stevens campaigning in Grand Rapids. So Sam Robinson, who's a Michigan reporter, he's going to be on with us in about a half an hour. He's going to join from the Haley Stevens headquarters. He posted this earlier this morning. This is from a Grand Rapids venue apologizing for for allowing Haley Stevens. They say Pucks was never advised that Haley Stevens would be connected with this event. We are heartbroken, as we pride ourselves on being not only a queer-friendly space, but also have advocated and continue to call for a free Palestine. We do not endorse Haley Stevens. Our promise to our community is that in the future, we will be more vigilant in requesting specific details for private events in the future. We apologize most sincerely and will be donating the proceeds tonight to the Grand Rapids Pride Center. So, David, is it a good sign when the venues are apologizing for hosting the candidate that's endorsed by the party establishment?
Yeah, probably a good sign for the challenger. Probably not such a good sign for the party establishment. And look, let's remember, independents can vote in this primary and unaffiliated, as it were. And I think that is also an important facet of these races all across the country, where in races where independents, people think, there's this idea in the political media that independents are between both parties, right? Oh, there's like independents or moderates. No. Independent, to my mind, and I think a lot of the data shows this, these are the anti-system voters. These are the voters who don't want to self-identify as part of any party because they hate both parties. And so I think independent voters in a race like this help what is perceived to be the anti-system candidate. And I think obviously Abway, this is a guy who clearly, when you talk to him, has thought a lot about this issue, right? He's not coming to this issue cold, right? And the politics of this issue, to be clear, in a state like Michigan, are not easy, right? It's clearly a moral issue, stopping the genocide and what's been going on there. But you've got a large Arab Muslim population, you've got a large Jewish population. So like navigating that in a statewide election is like not easy at all inside of a Democratic primary. And he has done a genuinely masterful job. I am really, really impressed with it. And that is where I think some of the comparison with Zoran Mamdani comes in, right? Because like you can't get elected mayor of New York City and sort of allow the anti-Semitism, bad faith attack stick to you. And I think Zoran Mamdani did an amazing job of dealing with that. And I think Abdul has done a terrific job of dealing with that. And that's why I think if he wins, on top of surviving the AIPAC onslaught, but if he wins having navigated it as well as he's navigated it, I think it creates a path for other Democrats, other populist progressive Democrats, to similarly navigate this in a way that doesn't allow for the really bad faith attacks. Hey, your criticism of Israel means you're an anti-Semite. That it can sort of we can move past that. And we need to be moving past that kind of attack actually working in politics generally, and specifically inside the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think Zoran did one of the biggest favors to anyone trying to critique Israel when he got asked, do you support Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state? And he said, as a state with equal rights. Because then, well, okay, if you're a supposed liberal, how are you going to say, well, they shouldn't have equal rights? That it completely flips the issue and reveals the illiberal position that most mainstream Democrats have held. It's remarkable to think about, though. And obviously, polls, by the way, just closed. So we should be starting to get some results in here. And actually, our own Logan Phillips, Race the White House, is with us to help us break down those numbers. But just before we get to that, Haley Stevens had all the ingredients that previously would have worked. She got all the endorsements. She had the Barack Obama quote. She had all the money. She had all the things that in previous cycles, we would have been, tearing our hair out and saying, this is so unfair, like all this money and all this support. And why can't it, ever work out for our side? And now, because the Democratic base is just in such a different place, it's a totally different day in the party. And obviously we can all think back very recently to Haley Stevens versus Andy Levin. AIPAC wanted, and Ryan has done, both of you guys have done some of the best reporting on all these dynamics, but Andy Levin, president of his synagogue, had a critique of Israel. AIPAC found that very threatening because of his Jewish faith, actually. So they actually targeted him because he was Jewish, like genuinely sort of an anti-Semitic attack from them
explicitly.
Versus Andy Levin.
Yeah.
And it worked. And it worked. I don't think that same playbook, David, would work this time around.
No, and I think 8 years later, or however many years later it was from that Levin primary, I think the question for AIPAC would be, how's it really worked out for you, right? Like I think the question for AIPAC is, you went in, you kind of heavy-handedly went into a primary. You could have stayed out. You went in, played in a heavy-handed way against Andy Levin, a president of a synagogue. You got what you wanted. And then years later, now here you are running back the same playbook with even more money. And you're probably, I mean, I don't know what the results are going to be, but you're probably not going to get the results you want. It doesn't look like you're going to get exactly the results you want. And so where are you really, right? But by polarizing this in the way you've tried to polarize it in such a heavy-handed way, I don't think it's really served even their agenda. I mean, I'm not being sympathetic to them. I'm saying like it didn't long term, it hasn't worked for them, right? It's been terrible for them. And I think it's been really good if Abdul ends up winning, it will be really good to move past where AIPAC has cynically tried to hold the conversation and hold the debate. That is why this race in particular is so potentially, if he wins, is so exciting, is to move past these paradigms that have existed honestly for 30, 40, 50 years where nobody in politics can talk about the things we're even talking about now.
That's right. I pulled up, can you guys see this on the screen? This is the first votes coming in here
Grand Rapids,
the Senate
Sorota.
race. Grand Rapids, right there where you're at. So look, it's 1% of votes in. It's a small amount here, so we shouldn't read too much here. But Abdul coming out ahead in this first batch, 55.4% to Haley Stevens, 39.1%. Logan, what are you looking at?
Oh, right now it's a little too early even for me with 1% in.
Come on, Logan.
I didn't have the exact
He's seen enough
for Grand Rapids down right here to just be able to bring it off the cuff. But I think what we're really going to look for is if Stevens is going to need a lot of things to be surprises for her to look good, right? She's coming into this definitely as the big underdog.
By the way, can we talk a little bit about for a second just Mallory McMorrow for just like 1 second here because I do think that's like a really important, now that she's been out of the race for a while. I do think what happened to her is really, really important. We wrote a piece after I did some reporting here in Michigan about how my interpretation is that Mallory McMorrow is an example of how the what you might call the middle lane in the Democratic Party has kind of collapsed, right? This if you think of the 2020 primary, right, the sort of kind of the Elizabeth Warren lane, right? The Elizabeth Warren lane has kind of
more Pete Buttigieg.
Pete Buttigieg,
yeah,
better example. Yes,
and we might get Liz Smith on the stream later tonight. Liz Smith did both Buttigieg and McMorrow. I feel like
that's a better example than Elizabeth Warren. But I just think like there's the sort of burning wing, and there's the establishment, the explicitly establishment corporate friendly wing, And this idea that you can run in a contested primary, a competitive primary, and try to like peel off from both of those wings. I don't want to say that's like over, but I think that's a harder case to make now, where the issues really feel extremely polarized. And I think McMorrow kind of she very explicitly tried to position herself as that. And it definitely did not work. And I think, look, she had some decent, high level, high profile endorsements, and it sort of failure to launch. And actually, she kind of collapsed after she tried to polarize against Abdul when she criticized him for campaigning with Hassan, and that boomeranged. And I do wonder if, at least at the national political class level, whether the takeaway from her race, whether people looking at that may say, hey, listen, if we try to run that back, like, that's not going to work. Are there 2028 lessons for that, for the 2028 candidates? Like, if you try to run in that kind of middle lane, that doesn't seem like a really viable lane.
Yeah, well,
And
it's
AIPAC
crazy too. Go ahead, Ryan.
Just real quick. Yeah, AIPAC played a really interesting role in her thinking there, because, she wanted to be the progressive candidate, but she also didn't want to get nuked by AIPAC. And so very early on, she reached out to one of her top donors, said AIPAC, and put forward a position paper to AIPAC. I think he misspoke. I think it was DMFI, which is Democratic Majority for Israel. But she wrote a position paper that was very satisfying to pro-Israel donors, not trying to get their support, but just saying, don't kill me and don't go in for Haley Stevens. Like, let us fight this out. But because she had to look over her shoulder the entire time at AIPAC, I think it kind of hamstrung her, or she was kind of fighting with one hand tied behind her back a little bit. If she didn't have to worry about that, and well, I mean, obviously she didn't have to worry about it. That was a choice that she made. So I'm not exonerating the choice that she made. But let's say that pressure isn't there and she's not feeling it. Maybe she's able to crowd out Abdul al-Sayed a little bit more.
There was a point where it looked like that was going to happen. She briefly took the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you guys are definitely onto something. I think part of this is also that Abdul al-Sayed is a really strong candidate who has run before. He learned from his last experience, and he ran an exceptional campaign. And what particularly he did a great job with is exciting his voters and showing a lot of energy and enthusiasm. So I think you're going to see some races where someone like her is going to win. But I agree with you that it's harder, because what it used to be that Democrats would do, right, is they'd say, oh, he's too left to win. She doesn't represent all the things I'm passionate about. And even, her stance in Israel might have offended them then. If we're talking 2 years ago, it's not 4 years ago, maybe. But the compromise choice probably would have been Mallory McMorrow, who comes in. It's a three-way race, and she ultimately breaks ahead as sort of like the Goldilocks candidate that you like just enough and that you think can win. But I think now Democrats want a lot more change than they used to, and so they went for the bolder candidate.
And I would add, I think Mallory McMorrow, just very quickly, I think she is a candidate who, in a ranked choice voting situation, probably does quite well, right? I think in Maine, in the gubernatorial race up there, the jockeying for the second slot ended up, I think, significantly benefiting the ultimate nominee, Hannah Pingree, who didn't win on the sort of first round. But I think the middle lane in a kind of winner-take-all primaries like we have now, I just think that is a tough lane to be in now.
Yeah, the person who is pulling it off is actually James Tallarico, who uses a lot of rhetoric that has a lot of lefties very excited about. It's sort of like class-centered and talking about the billionaires. I think another Liz Smith candidate. But then you go and look at the issues and you're like, oh, he's not for Medicare for all. And he's a little squishy on like Israel and what he thinks there, et cetera. But I think the key thing there is that he didn't have a challenger to his left. He had Jasmine Crockett, who like is whatever she is, and and had taken pro-Israel money and certainly didn't position herself like clearly to his left in any way whatsoever. And so he didn't have to be pressed on those issues, didn't have to answer to a Democratic primary based on those issues. But certainly if you're thinking about 2028, Gavin Newsom or whoever is not going to have that luxury. They're going to have a range of candidates who are giving the base, or we're going to look at these election results and see where the base is and decide, what, I better give them what they want, because, it's very clear that there's a huge divide between where the Democratic elected elites are at this point and the base of the party. It's never been more clear. And it's not something that can be sustained for a long period of time. That is really the reckoning that is happening right now as we speak.
And I would say this: I am encouraged by Tallarico, at least rhetorically, in this way. I totally agree with you, Crystal. Like, I think Tallarico. By the way, I would add that Ossoff to this crew, where they have sort of the luxury, if you want to call it that, of really, really strong anti-billionaire, anti-corruption rhetoric without having to actually deal with whether they're putting that rhetoric into action. But we we have a piece on our website right now about how, if you look at what Tallarico said in the last few days, and you look at what Haley Stevens said in the last 2 days, I found it truly fascinating in that Tallarico said has this line now where he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but the corruption crisis creates the affordability crisis, right? Like, now, obviously, as an anti-corruption money and politics reporter, like, that's music to my ears. But that's what's become like kind of an Ossoff-ish line as well. And so it's linking the affordability crisis with money and politics, billionaires, oligarchy, and the corruption crisis. Haley Stevens, in the final few days of this race, kind of facing questions about all the money that was coming into the race for her, started saying that campaign finances, she called it an educated issue. It's just the idea being it's just like a good government issue. It's like sort of an abstraction. And she started making the distinction between, there's campaign finance as an educated issue, and then there's like affordability issues. So trying to de-link corruption from the affordability crisis. And I actually think that's a really important telling contrast that if you really want to understand the factional fight in the Democratic Party, genuinely, I think it's those on one side are those who are saying the corruption crisis creates the affordability crisis, and there on the other side there are sort of machine politicians, establishment politicians, who think that corruption, money and politics, corporate power over our democracy is sort of a side issue, and that actually you can create affordability and policy solutions without ever dealing with the corruption crisis. Isn't really money and politics isn't really a problem. And I think that actually kind of summarizes in a lot of ways like the factional divide inside of the Democratic Party.
It's crazy to make the comment that money in politics is like some elite college educated grad school fixation. I mean, if you've talked to any working class person about their disgust with the political system, like, corruption and money in politics is going to be very high top of the list. And it's something that, living in a conservative area, that I can talk to anyone here about, and they're going to have a very similar opinion to what I have on it. So that is a
Crystal,
wild
in your
framing.
defense, if you're getting 80 million from outside groups helping your campaign, then I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I actually think, I mean, there's sort of like an old fashioned, it's almost like, I mean, it's cynical, but it's almost like old fashioned. It's like the idea of like the honest graft, like the machine politician who may be corrupt, but who's at least like delivering for the neighborhood. But like corruption now, I think people when people think of corruption, they're not thinking about like, my local ward politician is getting some money here, but he's still delivering. It's like money corruption is like super PACs are literally trying to buy the entire election, right? But I do think, like, whether it's Third Way or the bench, majority Democrats, all of these sort of billionaire front groups, they're trying to de-emphasize corruption's link to the affordability crisis because they are corruption. right? Like
Yeah.
they have to try to say that it's just a good government abstraction. And I really do think that this race in Michigan foreshadows what's coming in 2028 if Abdul El Sayed wins, where one of the three planks is money out of politics, is corruption. Now, one other thing to say about this is that if Abdul El Sayed wins, Ryan, I want to go back to your point, which I think was a really important point, which is we may be in like a new age where if candidates can raise threshold money, which is an important concept, right? I mean, that's not nothing, right? To get threshold money, you got to raise like real money here. But if you can get threshold money, then being outspent 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, 6-1 in this race, what, 10-1, right? If you can still hit the one that's threshold money, enough people know who you are, and you can still compete, I feel like that's a new paradigm. Zoran was able to do that because of public financing of elections in New York. Abdul was able to get threshold money, but or at least threshold name recognition and attentionally threshold because he was known as a good social media game, right? What I'm excited about here is not that like super PACs don't matter, but it used to be what, 5-10 years ago. If a super PAC outspent you 10-1, like that's over. It's not a race. It's goodbye, right? In Colorado, right? Phil Weiser was outspent, I think it was 3-4-1 by Michael Bennett's super PACs, and Phil Weiser won by 15 points. Again, Phil Weiser reached threshold money. Like if we're in a new paradigm where if you can at least raise threshold money, you can actually have a shot to win, like a legit shot, that is a game changer. And that must be what scares the Democratic establishment, AIPAC, the AI guys, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that is true.
I'm going to throw the results back. Yeah, here we go. Logan, tell us. So the expectation is that the day of votes are better for Abdul than the mail-in votes, is the understanding. Do you know how, like, what is coming in first? Are they doing the mail-in ballots first? Do we have any sense of what the ordering of things is here?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't actually know. So I think I'm looking more a little bit regionally, and we'll see. You know, he's
the problem is Michigan does it differently in different counties.
Oh, okay.
I think
so. It's not like
Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids do election day first. I know Ann Arbor does. I don't know about Grand Rapids. Whereas most of the rest of the state does the mail and then the absentee, or the absentee and the mail. So yeah, to Logan's point, it's kind of hard to know. Maybe somebody knows, and we can check and we can ask around. But yeah,
Logan,
it's very case by case.
What are you looking at regionally?
I just feel like we don't have enough information to know too much. It's a good sign with less than 1% in for El Sayed that he's doing so well in Wayne County, because in theory that would be a stronger place potentially for Haley Stevens. But what I would say is, earlier in our conversation, if you're someone that's not socialist or you're not like very progressive, you got to run a little bit differently now, right? Like you have to be running to some degree on a change election, and you have to choose the things that you want to fight for, whether it's corruption or it's housing or education. You have to have some theory of change, because if it's just put me in there and I'll do slightly better than the last, that's how you outspend the other person 10-1 and still lose the race.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I want to add one thing. The craziest thing to me was how Haley Stevens closed out this race. Like all of the ads where she was like, "I'm the most effective member of Congress." And this happened, by the way, in Denver with Diana DeGette. Diana DeGette, long-time, forever congressperson, very not present in the district. Malat Quiros challenged her. Malat Quiros won. I'm sure people watching this know that she won this primary. And towards the last few weeks of the race, Diana DeGette realized it was a race and started, frantically campaigning, saying, "I'm next in line to be chair of the committee that could pass Medicare for all. And look at all the things that I've done." And I bring this up because when Haley Stevens started to close this race by saying, I've been named the most effective member of Michigan's delegation, the first thing in my mind was, most voters don't think anybody in Congress are doing anything, much less being effective. So all you're really doing is reminding voters that you're the quasi-incumbent. So you're going into an election, an anti-incumbent election, effectively reminding voters who the incumbent is. Like,
Yeah.
what's really bizarre to me is if you're running in one of these contested primaries, why are you trying to run by reminding folks that you've been there? Like that just seems so incredibly tone deaf. And look, what happened to Diana DeGette? She got blasted out of Congress. You know, I we'll see what happens with Haley Stevens, but I just like, who is giving Haley Stevens the advice being like, hey, it's an anti-incumbent year. Remind everybody that you're actually the incumbent. Like, who is giving her that advice?
What else would she run on? Because that's the thing is like,
I mean, anything other than like, I've been here forever.
Yeah. I want to get you guys' reaction. This was I haven't watched this clip yet, but this was a voter who was interviewed over on MS Now. So let's take a listen to what this Michigan voter had to say about the race.
A single of our family's tax-paying dollars to go towards something like that. It's like giving money to violence.
So would you support a Senate candidate, in this case, Haley Stevens, who's more of a moderate like you tend to like, but would that be enough?
That would definitely turn me off as 100%. I couldn't. I would vote for a communist first.
I would vote for a communist first. And Ryan, that is one of the things that I don't think they've reckoned with is like, you know, there's been so much internal Democratic Party propaganda about what DSA or left-aligned candidates are and who they appeal to. It was just young people. It was just, you know, young affluent white people. And then you start to, okay, well, it's just young people in general. Okay, well, now we're seeing a little bit more diversity in the ranks, et cetera. And now here you have this like middle-aged white woman who describes herself as a moderate who's like, I'd rather vote for a communist than Haley Stevens because of her support for a genocide. She's like, absolutely not. I would never do that. 100% no. And I just don't think that it has sunk into them that the average normie, run-of-the-mill, rank-and-file Democratic voter is disgusted with what was done in Gaza and wants Medicare for all and is much more aligned with the left of the party than with the Haley Stevens of the party, which is part of why she runs on, you know, amorphous things like, oh, I'll get things done, because her views do not align with the base of the party. The normies have really rejected them at this point.
Yeah, and it's coming as prices are going up and things are becoming less affordable. So I think the things blend together in people's mind. Like we're using our tax money and all of our energy. Like it feels like, forget like just the money, but just the headspace that we have put in the last couple of years to annihilating this small enclave and then going to war with Iran, which many people believe a couple things. Actually, we did a poll. 50% of Americans believe that Trump went to war in part to cover up the Epstein scandal. And most people believe that Israel, including Marco Rubio, you know, at least persuaded us on the timing, if not the overall idea of going. And so you have all of that together. So you're seeing gas at $4 a gallon. You're seeing everything at the grocery store going up. You're seeing interest rates, you know, spiking everywhere. So if you want to sell your house, you want to buy a house, you're renting, you're trying to buy a first home, everything is becoming less and less affordable. And all of these things, I think, feel connected for people, and they're not wrong. Like they are connected. You know, Abdul al-Said will get made fun of, say, "Oh, you blame everything on Israel." It's not that Israel alone is responsible for all of this, but the way that we're structuring our attention and our energy and our money is related to the fact that interest rates are flying, gas is much more expensive, things are getting worse, and we're not focused on fixing them. So yes, and then of course for some people, and it looked like for that woman, it's just a moral issue. She's like, we're funding violence with our tax money. Like that's just wrong. I'd rather vote for somebody I disagree with, a communist who's not doing that, than get somebody who's more moderate on taxes. But the taxes that they do collect are going to be sent there.
So I got to run right now. I have got to go because my family is calling me. But I just want to echo that and just also add that Abdul has done. He has really zeroed his message in on that. He has this line that he says over and over again. And I'm not, it's just the repetition is what being a good candidate is.
Mhm.
And he says something to the effect of, we're spending money to fund a genocide while our schools haven't gotten the money they need for 50 years. Our schools look 50 years old, like our schools are crumbling, right? And I just think now there's like a let's game that out. Like, how much money are we spending? People have tried to parse that. Oh, or, the amount of money that we're giving to Israel, et cetera, is tiny compared to the Department of Education. But the point is, it's not just rhetoric. It's actually, I think, what it really does represent. Yes, it's budgetarily true. It's both budget. Yes, we are funding that, but it's also like, where is our focus? And I think that's the power of what Abdul has been saying, that we apparently have endless money to fund all this crap and all this terribleness, including funding a genocide, while schools in our communities don't have the money they need for basic education. And I think that then you see a voter like that who is essentially expressing the same kind of thing. And it's like, the granular details of the budget of the budget question matter less than what the budget and the spending in both places represents. And I think that has been such a powerful part of why Abdul has been able to succeed here. So listen, I got to run. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it, you guys.
Thank you, David. Enjoy Grand Rapids. And to add one point to that too, now we're also using billions of dollars to bail out the Japanese yen. Like, all of a sudden, like, we have $5 to $10 to $15 billion dollars. You have to prop up the currency, which the currency's crashing because of the Strait of Hormuz being closed and the entire East Asian economy collapsing. And Japan is what you've probably been researching this for that. Japan is what, the third biggest buyer of U.S. treasuries. They're definitely top 3 or top 4. And so in order to prop up their own currency, they would have to sell U.S. debt to then use their cash to then prop up their currency, which would mean interest rates for our debt would go way up. And so we come in with our own money out of our central bank, just shoveling billions of dollars to Japan. And so when fact checkers try to come at Abdul al-Sayed and say, the MOU is only $3.3 billion per year for Israel, and the education budget for the state of Michigan is blah, blah. It's like, well, right, where's our focus? And what about the $15 billion that the Fed is using to prop up the Japanese currency right now? Like, that is only happening because of the war, and it is an indication of where our priorities are, and that's really his point.
Yeah. And it's also an indication of how screwed we are. And I was thinking about this earlier too. Part of the issue for these centrist candidates as well is not only are they, wrong on Israel, but they're also not outspoken on Iran, which is another issue that people obviously really care a lot about. And they are bad on data centers, which is not only an issue in Democratic primaries. I mean, that really is a cross ideological issue that I think gives left candidates a real argument for why they're more electable than these more, milquetoast centrist corporate candidates who can't come out in favor of a moratorium. And guys, I don't know if you could put up Michigan's 7th results here, but Will Lawrence, who we had on the show and who really has made opposing data centers, a centerpiece of his campaign. He's got a sizable lead here. It's only 5% of the vote in, but he's about at 47% of the vote. And then his other two opponents are down at 26 and 25%. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of hand wringing if the results look like this at the end of somebody should have dropped out and endorsed somebody else so we could block this lefty from getting into office. But I have to tell you, I was so impressed with Will, Ryan, when we spoke with him. And I know Emily, who obviously has a different political valence than we do, she was as well, just because he was so grounded, so knowledgeable, so well informed, and very smart to lean into what I think is going to be only increasingly important issue, which is the disgust people feel over data centers. And this really is a democracy issue too, because people feel like they're losing control of what happens in their own communities, and they want to say in what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, and what's really good for Will in these numbers is that they very closely match several of the polls that I heard about in the last couple of weeks that were done internally by both the Lawrence campaign, but also for super PACs that were spending against Lawrence, who I have some sources in that world that I reported on about. They were finding Masdam down by about 20 points, and Will pushing close to 50%. So the actual returns so far are matching that, which is extremely bad news for them. Bizarrely, like DMFI came in the last week and a half with a huge amount of money, even knowing what the polling was. It really confused a lot of the people involved in the race, because like everyone was like, okay, this race is kind of over. Like there's really no path to victory for Muslim, and DMFI still came in with this huge spend down the stretch. And then also bizarrely, and I'm curious for your take on this, Will got in the last week maybe 500,000 to maybe even upwards of $1 million from this PAC that came out of nowhere, that has all the hallmarks of a Republican rat fuck super PAC, like the kind that pretends to be Democratic and goes in to try to boost people. And on the one hand, you're like, what are they doing? Like, it's over. Like Will's going to win already. Why are they spending $1 million to boost Will and knock out Matt Masdam? In all the other races where Republicans have come in to a Democratic primary and tried to elevate another candidate, the strategy has been obvious. Like the person was a complete lunatic. Like they did it in the Lehigh Valley, where they tried to lift somebody who like obviously would have lost. Like everybody agreed would have like just gotten annihilated in the general election. And then they found that kooky, like anti-Semitic weirdo down in Texas that they were spending, remember this, like $1 million or something to try to get her to be the Democratic nominee. They fell short in that one, but you could see the logic in it both times. You're like, okay, yes, that person's obviously going to lose. Clearly, they think they see something that we don't, because they seem to think that Will Lawrence is, at least he's more beatable than the Navy SEAL guy. Like maybe they have so much money that they're like, let's just go ahead and spend $1 million to make sure it's this guy over the Navy SEAL. We're afraid of the Navy SEAL. Like maybe they think a lot like Rahm Emanuel does. That they see a Navy SEAL and they're like, oh my God, we're going to lose. I
think there's a lot of Beltway conventional wisdom going on from the Republicans. There was that whole thing of like, oh, Mike Rogers, there was some leak audio of him saying he wanted to run against Abdul. And it's like, really be careful what you wish for here, because he's a very talented candidate, has a really passionate base. He has a great ground game, that he has organized. There are some, some Haley Stevens supporters are like, I don't know if I'll support him. Usually what happens is once the primary is over and that ugliness is behind, they focus in on how much they don't want a Republican to represent them. And they, they come around eventually, outside of the like Hillary Schultons of the world or whatever, the James Carvilles of the world who may never recover. But he's going to be a force to reckon with, because he has a moral clarity. And the very same, I saw somebody was driving around a truck with a billboard today that was like, Abdul is Michigan first and Haley Stevens is Israel first. I mean, that's going to work against Mike Rogers as well. And it's going to be very potent. So in the same way that Kamala ended up with a big turnout issue because there was, a large portion of the base that was disgusted with her, perspective and her aiding and abetting a genocide, Haley Stevens would have that same issue of demoralizing the base of the party, which is really critical, Logan, in midterm elections. It's all about, who's excited and who turns out ultimately. So if Republicans think that Abdul's going to be an easier candidate to beat, I don't really buy that analysis.
Yeah, I don't buy it either. I mean,
you're less of a raging populist than us, so maybe you are a little more clear-eyed. What do the Republicans see here in this mid-Michigan race that we don't see?
So I would just say, whether it's true or not in the future, historically speaking, the candidate that's a little closer to the center does a little bit better, right? But it's far from the only thing that matters. El Said is just so much more charismatic. And I also think that there's some really long-term consequences that you guys are touching on for Haley Stevens, where, for voters that are under the age of 35, maybe 40, who previously, when they voted for Joe Biden over Donald Trump and viewed this is more of like a moral choice between two parties, choosing someone like Haley Stevens makes them feel like it's a choice between two evils, and they have to choose who's the lesser of two evils. And so, even though Democrats are a lot more aligned on average with like the average person who's Gen Z, it's just going to create more separation between them and the party. They might be looking or open to jumping ship for Republicans, as we saw plenty did in the last presidential election. So I think it's sort of like, I don't even think I feel confident saying there's short-term gain with Stevens, but I do think that there's long-term pain.
And what about no, go ahead. We've got Ann Arbor in now.
Yeah, I was just looking at the results too.
In.
If we can put them back up on the screen. I don't know, Ryan, is that your tab that you've got shared? If you want to jump over to the Michigan Senate. But his, now we got 4% of vote in. There. Still a long way to go. But his lead is only widening at this point. Now he's at 62% of the vote. She's down at 34%. And I have seen some things on Twitter, analysis between the absentee, like the early ballots versus the election day. And there is a huge shift towards Abdul, it appears, in the election day vote. So, as we get more and more of that election day in, you would expect these numbers to look really good for him. I mean, I'm not going to, there it is, changing and, increasing his lead even more. I will wait to give a more official result, but I am seeing people on Twitter who are already like, it's over, he won. So.
Yeah, this couldn't look much better early on, right? Like, it's hard to know exactly what the electorate's going to look like by the end, but we have Eden County. It's a suburban county between Grand Rapids and Ann Arbor. 40%, and El Said's now winning it by 20. The number keeps growing up. He's doing exceptionally well in Kent County, home of Grand Rapids, where he's winning by 16% with 18% in. So, I mean, that's not a nothing percentage, right? So there's only 2 counties in the entire state right now out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 counties that we have any results in that Stevens is winning. She's winning those by 2 and by 3%. There's like 1,000 votes in the 2 combined, where you have a place like this is where pronunciation gets tough when you're in Michigan or Wisconsin. Washtenaw County, El Said is winning by 38%.
I'm going to put up the Missouri race between Cori Bush and Wesley Bell rematch there, and we can talk a little bit about that one. We've got some first results in here, 16% of the vote in, Wesley Bell taking a big lead, 77% to Cori Bush, 20%. Now, you are going to have a similar dynamic here where the early vote is going to be more heavily for him. The day of vote is going to be more in favor of her. Ryan, when she first won for Congress, I remember a big comeback vote when people thought that race was over and she was able to pull it off. But this is a very large deficit that she is starting off with here with 16% of the vote in.
Yeah, and you're only going to have, between 60 and 100,000 votes anyway, right, Logan, in a St. Louis district primary. So I don't see how she overcomes that. There's a lot of criticism of kind of the outside super PACs and like a lot of squad members and others who didn't get behind Cori Bush. There was always just this sense that it was almost too much of a hill for her to climb. Some of the polling that I've heard about found that for whatever reason, like the negatives on Wesley Bell just didn't really stick, and the negatives on Cori Bush like really hit hard. I
also
they really
think,
hammered her for missing a lot of votes. And
if you're a member that's getting targeted by an outside group, especially AIPAC, by overwhelming money, and you have a weakness they can exploit, you're going to potentially be in trouble. You almost have to hold yourself to a higher standard. And I think for her, the vote on the Biden infrastructure bill, even that's less of a focal point this round, not voting for that, really ended up hurting her because
they still hit her with it.
Did they?
They're still hitting her with that. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think because there's a lot of Democrats that want progressives, but they don't want a Tea Party that isn't voting for key legislation. And so is that all of who Cori Bush is? No. But that prism is unhelpful for her.
Let me play. We got a little Van Jones analysis here that I'm curious about. Let me go ahead and pull this up, and we can see how he's feeling about the Michigan race in particular. Where did I go? There we go.
Democratic-based voters want.
Okay, Van Jones, what are the stakes here for Democrats?
This is the whole ball of wax. I'm from Jackson, Tennessee. There was a guy named Gil Scott Heron who had a great poem. It was called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." Gil Scott Heron is wrong. The revolution is being televised and podcast and streamed and elected tonight. Why is that? It's because there is a credibility gap that's opened up between the Democratic Party establishment and this insurgency. People are looking at people and they're saying, you've been telling us the same thing for a long time and our lives are not any better. We got Donald Trump twice. There's also an innovation gap. Why can you spend $60 million and get whooped like this? Because the old model was you get the donors to get the consultants to buy a bunch of ads and you win. That's how you get attention. This movement says, I don't need donors, ads, I don't need consultants. I'm going right to the people with TikTok and grassroots. And they've disintermediated the entire donor class, disintermediated the entire consultant class. And this is a revolution. And so this is going to happen again and again. The Democratic Party is now Blockbuster. These kids are Netflix. We are selling CDs out the trunk. This is Napster becoming Spotify, and it's happening tonight.
What do you think of that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I guess welcome to 2026. I mean, what's like he is the he is what they're talking about. Like he's the problem. All right, so we have Dropside has a couple reporters, A.B. Yusuf and Jude out at the Abdul al-Sayed victory party, as it looks like at this point. How you guys doing? Can you hear us?
I can't hear. Can you hear? No, I can't.
You can't. Can you? 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3.
Y'all hear us?
No.
Nope.
No.
All right, let's.
Brad. Yeah, Brad. You want to just work out their audio, and then we'll bring them back in. They have incoming members of Congress who are out on the scene. Chris Rabb and Melat Kiros with them, so they'll be joining when we can figure out the tech specs there. That'll be interesting. Let's check Donovan McKinney because the entire world, while Cori Bush kind of got ignored down the stretch, and actually through most of the campaign, the entire kind of progressive world stormed into Detroit for Donovan McKinney's race because
they
he
don't
was
have any
facing
results in yet for that one yet.
Okay,
at least not on New York.
So he was polls had him down by about 5 points, and there's this interesting problem with DSA in Detroit where Tom Perkins wrote about this for Dropsite, where a lot of candidates who consider themselves socialists, who are black candidates who consider themselves socialists, won't use that word anywhere around older black voters. It has a connotation of Mamdani didn't like Abdul al-Sayed, wasn't that popular among older black voters, and there's some real kind of racial tensions inside the city of Detroit, where a lot of the kind of gas station owners or other, shop owners are Arab, and a lot of the some of the older residents feel like they've been mistreated by them, and then blame that, kind of project that onto the DSA in a way that has had some candidates shy away from the term. However, Denzel McCampbell, who was actually, you may know him, he was Rashida Tlaib's old communications director. He won a city council seat as a Democratic Socialist in Detroit in 2025, and did so proudly. He has endorsed McKinney, so it's not impossible at all. And so what the hope was that with enough campaigns coming in, you had Adam Hamaway from New Jersey come in and with staff. You had Chris Rabb, Maylak Kiros. You had people from it was like Avengers from around the country who'd already won or lost their races, like Kat Abu Ghazala. She's been traveling the country supporting candidates. Shroykat Chakrabarty has been paying for using his PAC to like pay for phone banks and stuff for candidates. So the hope was that he was only behind by the kind of margin of getting out the vote that if you just get enough people into Detroit, that you can drag enough people out to the polls. So we'll see about that. Let me check in with them.
I've got a little election nugget here. Logan, you can take a look at this. So this is the first fully completed town in Washtenaw County. Apologies if I butchered that. Gretchen Whitmer won it 58-31 over Abdul when he ran for governor. Tonight, Abdul wins it 52-45. So that's the sort of result he's certainly going to want to be seeing in these. And it looks like, based on the analysis I'm seeing, he's kind of overperforming everywhere across the board. I think more at this point, it's a question of how big of a blowout it's going to be.
Yeah, I think you're right. The whole county as a whole has a lot of college students, so it makes sense that that's his best county so far. But I think one thing we can all say confidently is he's certainly going to have a better election than he did in 2018. Now, yeah. I think one thing that might be worth talking about here too is I feel like we should be looking at this to some degree in the larger context of global politics with the trend left, because America's system is different than other countries. But we've seen country after country where you're seeing rises of third, fourth, fifth parties come up and take power from the established two parties of left and right and far left, right? And the American equivalent of that, because our system doesn't really allow for the growth of third parties, is through primaries. But it just seems that whenever it's social media, stagnation of economies in the modern era, a lot of these countries that had tremendous amounts of growth and just have slowed down and they're not living up to people's expectations, that you're having these movements. And for the U.S., at least for Democrats, it's been a little slower. I mean, there's been massive signs, obviously, going back to 2016 with Bernie Sanders and arguably even with Obama in 2008. But I think this is, I think to some degree that says potentially something about the strength and durability of it in the United States too.
Yeah. Let me get, I got another clip here for us to take a look at. Let me pull this one up. So I mentioned before with Kyle that you've got a few Democratic elites. James Carville is one. Hillary Scholten, who's a representative in Michigan, is another, who say she said she wouldn't back Abdul if he's the nominee. Carville says he doesn't even want to be in the Democratic Party anymore if it's the type of party that's going to nominate people like Abdul El-Sayed. Debbie Dingell was asked about Hillary Scholten refusing to back El-Sayed, and she, said that she would talk to her. Let's go ahead and take a listen to this.
Some of your Democratic colleagues, like Representative Hillary Scholten, have not committed to backing El-Sayed if he wins the primary. What would you say to them?
I'm going to talk to Hillary. She's my friend and my colleague. And we've got to understand that what's at stake. We know what Mike Rogers, who's going to be the Senate nominee, will do. He'll support the president. What's he going to do if we have an opening on the Supreme Court? How is he going to fix the broken healthcare system? Is he going to support the president on privatizing Medicare and Social Security? These are basic issues that keeping this seat Democratic in the Senate matter, and which is why we do have to unite. Look, I know Abdul. I probably know Abdul better than many people in this state do. He's talked about tried to run against me, but we still talk on a regular basis. We disagree on some issues, but Abdul and I care about people, and we care about everybody having health care. I have disagreements with people on both sides of the aisle.
Some of your Democrats.
So there you go. Her saying, oh, look, I'm going to talk to, is it Skolton? I've been saying Sholton, but whatever. Anyway,
It's
this other
Sholton.
lady. Is it
Oh,
Sholton? Okay.
I think so.
I mean, it certainly looks like it's Sholton, but we got your drop site people back. Should we see if we can hear them now, Ryan?
Let's try it.
No.
Oh,
No,
lost him again.
Yep. You're still working that one out. In any
Sam
case,
Robinson's going to try to join too.
okay, perfect. In any case, Ryan, I'm curious
Haley
your view
party.
on this because there was, in the rise of Trump, and I'm not equating Abdul to Trump in any regard because I would never do that. But there was this contingent of never Trump Republicans. And there was a sense that this would represent a large faction of the Republican Party, but it didn't. It ended up representing, a large faction of sort of like people who would be in cable news green rooms, but that was really about it. And I do think you're going to have some of that now with the Democratic Party. You're going to have some people like James Carville who say, you know what, this is it for me, who move on. Maybe perhaps John Fetterman, who says he's not going to switch parties, but he also said that Israel would be a red line for him. So do you think we're going to have a sort of like never pro-Palestine faction that just leaves the Democratic Party of sort of like elected elites or tastemakers within the party that just, decide that they're done?
They're going to have the same problem that people on the left wing of the party had, is that there's nowhere for them to go. Like, they're going to go become MAGA like that. It's a two-party country. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but that's what it is. This is not Europe that has parliamentary democracies where you can kind of bounce around from different parties and narrowly join parties that, fit your exact political persuasion. This is what we are, and thus we completely, rewrite our election rules. And so I think they might threaten that. And I think maybe somebody like Fetterman might do it, but he's losing either way. He'll lose as a Republican, he'll lose as a Democrat. But he could certainly throw the Senate to Republicans as a last act if he wanted to. But other than that, like a senator is a different question. The House, like, you switch parties, become a Republican. Like, Hillary Sholton's not a Republican. What is she talking about? And if she becomes one, she'll either get beaten by a Republican in the primary. Well, first she would get beaten by a Republican in the next primary, and then if she didn't, she'd get beaten by a Democrat in the general. So there's just
she'll get over it. I think
there's no place for that.
I just think this is a temporary thing for her, and she just has to get through it, and then in a month or something, she'll get over it, is my guess.
Well, we will see. We've got Sam Robinson joining us now, who joined us last week and gave us a great breakdown. He's been doing incredible reporting on the ground of both, candidates and their supporters. Where have you been today, Sam? Who have you been talking to?
So I've been to, thank you guys so much for having me back, a number of polling places across the city that are sort of confirming the assumption or the narrative that elder Black folks, more wealthy white voters are going to skew for for Haley Stevens, at least in Detroit. El Sayed, is really looking like it's feeling like he's in good standing. I've talked to more than a few at my neighborhood polling place on Detroit's east side that tell me they're sick and tired of the status quo. They feel like Democrats aren't doing enough. Haley Stevens' watch party is where I am parked right outside of currently. The vibe is much different than at Abdul al-Sayed's watch party. I'm actually trying to make it to State Rep Donovan McKinney's watch party. He is, of course, running against incumbent U.S. Representative Shri Tanadar under the progressive DSA, Rashida Tlaib-backed wing of Michigan's Democratic Party. That wing had a lot of momentum earlier this year at the state convention, and people are expecting it to be the same today.
Let me go ahead and pull up one of the clips you've got here from the Haley watch party, and get your sense on whether this was kind of a typical sentiment for her voters. What's that, Ryan?
And then it looks like we have Maylott and Chris Rabb when you've got a second.
Okay, we'll play this and we'll go to them.
All right.
Ryan, where are you from? I'm from Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. What brought you to Detroit?
I live here. I've been
Okay,
living here
but you're from...
since 84.
Oh, wow. Since the Tigers won the World Series, huh?
Yes. My cousin used to play for the Pistons, Jerry Stackhouse.
Oh, Jerry Stackhouse is your cousin.
Yes.
And tell me why you're supporting Haley Stevens.
I'm supporting Haley because she's for us. She is doing a lot to help us out.
It was a great call.
No, you're okay.
She's really good at what she's doing.
Yeah.
To help us out.
Yeah.
So she has a feel that, Haley's really looking out for whatever her, whatever she perceives her interest to be. What were some of the other things that you heard from the folks at Haley Stevens' watch party, Sam?
Yeah, well, a lot of folks, a lot of Black women in particular in Michigan's urban cores, Detroit, Flint, Jackson, Lansing, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, they are skeptical of the progressive wing of the party. A lot of folks tell me that they don't believe Abdul can defeat Mike Rogers, and they cite Islamophobia. Some, of course, we've seen be espoused from those same Haley Stevens supporters. But it's something that I think that woman encapsulated kind of the sort of, I guess, El Sayed supporters would say a word salad, right? That a lot of people don't know, specifically what Haley is standing for. Her voters talk to me about voting rights, about anti-Black racism. I just talked to a pastor at a Farmington Hills AME church that told me that Haley was the only Farmington Hills leader, politician that represents the area that took her concerns about racism in schools seriously. Told me about how when she called trying to get help for her Juneteenth event, Haley was there. She says Haley is on speed dial. And so Haley has done a lot of work to ingratiate herself into Detroit, Metro Detroit's Black African-American community. Abdul Al-Sayed, of course. Go ahead.
Sam, I'm going to bump you for a second. Why don't you head to the McKinney event, and then we'll grab you from there?
Sure. Sounds good.
Does that work? Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, guys.
I'm going to pull up. Can you, Jude, can you hear us?
Yes, I got you.
All right, sorry about that. Thank you, guys. Go ahead.
No worries. All right, so we're here at the watch party for Abdul Al-Sayed. I have Noah Pierce here. Hey, everyone. Chris Reb. Hey, folks. All right, so what are we doing here?
We're here to support Abdul Al-Sayed, and we're out here in Michigan also to support Don McKinney, Rashid Flores. We've got incredible candidates that are right now, and all the money in our politics.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is about people power over corporate greed. This is about reaching people closest to the pain. They see their own power in campaigns that are really rooted in transformative change and not just incrementalism, because that's what got us to where we are, and we shouldn't be proud of that. This is about bold vision, substance, and compassion.
Chris, I know you've been here for a few days now. What's the vibe been? How's the energy?
This vibe is electric. It reminds me of your primary night in Denver, and it was nothing like I've ever seen other than my own on May 19th in Philly. But this is all the same vibe across the country, irrespective of where it is. And that is an affirmation that this is a movement and not a moment.
Absolutely. All right. And, well, we have, the insurgency's happening here. Tell me, how do you feel about your primary?
Fantastic, right? Again, we were another example of us breaking that goalpost and then moving it over again. And, they said they could only be done in New York, and then we did it in Colorado, and then they were like, oh, it's only deep blue districts, but now we're about to do it in a battleground state as well, too.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you can get one question from me and to them. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, I hear you. Hold on. One more question.
So, how many incoming members and current members have you guys seen? Have they seen is there any organizing happening? Is there any talk about what they're going to do when they get into office? Like, is it developing in any particular direction?
Wants to know, is there any organizing as far as what you guys are planning to do when you get in office? What's the plan of action?
For sure. Right now, we got to make sure that we got as many people coming in together as possible, because the more people we have, the more leverage that we have in making sure that the establishment is actually learning lessons from this cycle and making sure that we're delivering real relief for working families.
And people also need to understand we're already connected. We're already in solidarity, supporting each other before we take office, even before the general election. That's why how we keep showing up for each other. So by the time January 3rd comes in and we're being sworn in, we have already built this meaningful caucus, informal or otherwise, that brings us together so that we can lead as a group of folks collectively, because that's what we stand for. That's the objective.
I hear you, but policy platform wise, what's the number one action that you're gonna try to take when you do get in office? Again, we got to build this movement still. We got other primaries. We got to make sure Justin Pearson gets out there as well too. We got Cory Bush that we're still waiting on as well. Like we got to make sure that we build out as big of a movement, and then we'll all sit down and figure out how we can leverage this strength that we've been building across this entire cycle to deliver for working families.
Yeah. 1 out of 435 is not going to do it. We have to do it together, right? That's how we won. That's how we campaign. That's how we're going to govern. And we don't know if we're going to be in the majority or not. The dynamics are going to be very different. If we are in the majority, then that's one consideration. If we're not, it's quite another. But we're not there yet. That's why we're here, to make sure that the folks in this fight get across the finish line so we can be as strong as possible.
Yeah. Is anybody going to Minnesota?
Is anyone going to Minnesota? For Penny? Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I'd love to. We got to make sure that we're supporting these statewide candidates.
That's right. We got to do what we can do.
All right. Anything else, Ryan?
That's all I got. Crystal, you got anything?
No, we're good. We're good. Tell them thank you and hello.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Great to see you guys. Thanks so much.
Y'all.
Ryan, I think that is very noteworthy. In fact, I've really taken note of how, as each of these left-wing candidates has won, they immediately turn around and start campaigning for whoever is coming up next. And to hear Rep Rab talking about how they see each other as a collective and they understand they need to work together to be able to leverage their power. I think that's a very significant comment there. I think we are going to be seeing that dynamic play out in quite an extraordinary way moving forward.
Yeah, and next week you've got another contested primary in Minnesota in the House. Who's I think Matt Little, I believe, is the progressive candidate there that is now getting like massive amounts of AIPAC money dumped on him through EDW Action 314, like these different shadow vehicles that AIPAC uses, and then you've got the Peggy Flanagan running for Senate. But yeah, Logan, we got a narrowing here. What's going on?
I was getting stuck in the House races. Give me 1 sec to catch up. Yeah, it's now down to an 8% lead.
Looks like a lot came in from Detroit, and Haley is up about 2 points in Oakland County, in Macomb County, and 4 points in Wayne County with what's in from those areas. So perhaps some of that vote being added in the greater Detroit area, it could be contributing to this tightening right now.
Yeah, and some of these are the places that she needs to be able to do well to be able to have a chance at winning. So I'm not surprised.
So far, she's not doing well. She's just right now. She's just even basically.
Yeah. So I don't really see her. Yeah, I mean, you get these little glimpses, and given that Michigan has an inconsistent strategy in how they're counting votes across different counties, it's hard to get a complete read of who's going to have the trajectory the rest of the way through. But it might not be as dominant of a victory as it looked early on, but I still feel that Abdul is in a terrific place right now.
Let's go ahead and pull up the 7th district if we can, guys, or here I can pull it up actually, because we have more results there too for Will Lawrence. Here. Got it. Here's the 7th congressional district. You guys see that. So we also have had a narrowing there as more vote has come in. He's got, like an 11 point roughly lead at this point, as more of that vote has come in. Let me go ahead and take a look at Donovan McKinney, who has a sizable lead at this point. Can see here plus 32. Very early days here, though. 2% of the
Right.
vote in. So that one still has a really long way to go. Not much to see there. Let me go ahead and pull up Missouri here for a second. It continues. They actually have called it now for Wesley Bell. So Cori Bush's comeback attempt here, it appears, is going to fall short. So very different dynamic playing out in this Missouri congressional district in and around St. Louis than what appears to be playing out in Michigan at this point.
Yeah, can we take a second to talk a little more about the general election? So there was a point where El Sayed had broken through and had gotten like about a 2.3% lead in my polling average. And especially as some of these attack ads have come in, he now is down by about 2.1%. Now, look, to be fair, getting 80 million against you is going to have that type of effect, and that's not terrible considering that. A lot of his underperformance right now seems to be coming from some of the Stevens voters that are now supporting him in as high numbers as we expect by the general election. We kind of talked about this really, really briefly this morning, but I feel like Barack Obama is going to be a particularly important surrogate, right? Because I don't think this was at all honest, but a lot of her attack ads made it seem like he had a thing about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. And so while Michelle Obama doesn't always like to get as involved when she doesn't have to, I think she's probably going to now in this race. And that could be a really important helper for him, which is like the long-term effectiveness. This isn't the strategy they would have won in the general election against him, right? Because obviously it's hard for them to say that he hates Barack Obama when he's on the stage with him and he's enthusiastically endorsing him or cutting ads.
Let me put this analysis up on the screen. This is from the head of data science at Vote Hub, Zachary Danini. He says still only 6% in, so it's early, but vibes are El Sayed plus 14 for me right now. Stevens holding solid in absentee, but that's all she's got so far. Hard to see single digits unless she does really well in Wayne County. That's Detroit. Harder to see her coming back and winning AES. Abdul El Sayed hitting his targets. And plus 14 would be right in line with where the polling had been coming into this. So at least for that particular analyst, that's the direction that he's, at least the vibes that he's getting from where this is headed.
Yes. And Logan, I sent you this drop site article. Let's see if we can check out some of these other races. I believe Ann Arbor mayor is a kind of a this is an attempt by insurgent candidates to oust an incumbent mayor. Here, let me send you this link. You can look for some of these. I'll drop it. I'll drop it in the chat. This has a bunch of interesting races. Let me see what else we got in here. I'll just put it.
Jocelyn Benson, who's the current Michigan Secretary of State, is going to be the Democratic gubernatorial nominee, and she's going to face Republican John James in November. So the governor's race appears to be set.
Yeah, so no precinct has been finished yet, but right now, Robbie has a lead 59 to 41% with about 13 to 14,000 votes counted. And that's
who is? Say that again.
DSA. The insurgent DSA member, Youssef Rabi, is leading right now 59 to 41% with about 13,000 votes in.
That's Ann Arbor mayor?
That's Ann Arbor mayor, yes.
That seems pretty difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
At that point. Let's see. Who else should we check here? Rashida Tlaib, I'm sure she's doing pretty well. State Senate District 2. This is a very interesting one. Abbas Alawi was the leader, one of the leaders of the uncommitted movement. If you watched it unfold outside of the DNC, you would recognize him. He was the kind of large, like charismatic spokesperson for the movement. He's somebody I've known for a long time because he was Cori Bush's chief of staff. He also worked for Andy Levin. Actually, when Andy Levin was in Congress, he worked for Rashida Tlaib at one point, and now he's running to represent Dearborn. And believe it or not, he would be the first Arab American to serve in the state Senate, which to me is quite surprising for Michigan. So where do you see, just put that on your list to look for state Senate District 2.
Yeah, there's less than 1% of votes in, but he's leading 65 to 35%. But we'll keep an eye on that one.
And then state Senate District 1 this is an interesting race. This guy Justin Onwenu, people can correct me if I'm wrong. My memory here, this was a DSA guy who kind of lost his mind after October 7th and went way right, and is now getting challenged by Abe Ayash from the left in state Senate District 1.
Right now, 3% in. Onwenu is up 52 to 48%. So right down the middle so far.
All right. And then in state Senate District 3, Ebony Taylor has Bernie Sanders' endorsement, running against
Conyers. Another Conyers is the third one, it looks like. I assume that's like the Michigan congressional family.
Yeah,
I presume they're related. Yeah, well, it's 22.5% Taylor, Conyers at 21.4%, 3% in.
Interesting. We got some others. We got some House races we can check out later when there's more of the vote share in.
So I got a couple of things I can pull up here that are interesting as results are coming in. First of all, this one. The University of Michigan Ann Arbor student precinct, Abdul Sayed 95%, Haley Stevens 5. And I'm sure, Ryan, you've been seeing this polling of like favorability numbers for her under like voters under age 40, basically. And she's deeply negative favorability among Democrats of these younger age groups. And I mean, that is really one of the stories here is just the Assad level numbers that left-wing candidates are able to drive up with young voters. And by young, I really mean like anyone, millennial or younger, which is not even that young at all at this point as an elder millennial myself. And so I think that is part of what's going on here is this new coalition that really has a lot of political power and has a very different view of how politics should be than the older cohort that votes in Democratic primaries. And, for all the pundits and Democratic electeds, Ryan, who I see saying that, the views on Israel are anti-Semitic and how dare you associate with Hassan Piker, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that they realize how out of touch and how really offensive they sound to young voters who are looking at candidates like Zoran, looking at candidates like Abdul, like, Will Lawrence, perhaps Francesca Hong, Peggy Flanagan, and they see someone who actually is standing up for values that they care about, who are going to push forward policies that they care about, and who, are being sort of like smeared and dismissed across the board. To me, that's one of the most important stories of what's going on here is this massive generational divide, even though, Abdul is going to have a broad coalition, both, age and gender and race, but his strongest numbers are going to be like these, the Ann Arbor student district where he's getting literally 95% of the vote.
And it's interesting how pundits never factor that into the electability argument. Like those votes count. And it's not a guarantee that this precinct that turned out 95-5, for Abdul El-Sayed would necessarily turn out with that energy for Stevens. Like you can yell at them and like tell them that they should and that it's their duty and all those things, but like whether they will or not is a very open question that never seems to get asked by those pundits. And also they don't take into account the energy that is involved there. Everybody who's covered this race on the ground talks about the fact that they've never seen, even compared to the Bernie Sanders campaign or the Jesse Jackson campaign back in the 80s in Michigan, they've never seen so many organized groups in like just events everywhere, every neighborhood practically having some organized event going out canvassing for El Sayed. And that's just a thing that Haley Stevens isn't going to bring to the general election. And another thing she's not going to bring to the general election is that $30 million bag from AIPAC. Like that was another thing that nobody really ever answered with any satisfaction. Why would AIPAC spend $30 million against a Republican who is pro-Israel? And like they would prefer actually a Republican to beat Haley Stevens. They would prefer that the Senate stay Republican. They may feel obligated to throw in $500,000 or $1 million to Stevens because they spent so much in the primary to get her there, so that doesn't look like they're totally abandoning her, because that doesn't send a good signal. But they're definitely not coming with $30 million. So who's filling that hole at that point? Nobody really addressed that. And so, yes, it's Logan's correct that like the political science is clear, closer to the center, gives you 1.5, 2 points on average overall. But those are huge questions that,
you know, Ryan, I agree with you guys. I also think that he's a stronger candidate. I just think she has, like, you don't want to take too much from a primary because it's a different skill set. But if she can't win with this amount of money, if he's able to mobilize this many people,
it's a pretty good test of whether you can win.
And also, like, I just think genuinely, like, it is easier to paint him as extreme, obviously, more so than Stevens, but people also want change at a higher level. And I just think there's times in American history where people are more willing to accept bigger change than others. You pay less of a price. And so my instinct is that's one of these times. I mean, socialism's popularity with the general populace has changed a great deal. It used to be incredibly unpopular. I think it's like 5 points underwater now, which is an absolutely dramatic change from 2 years ago, from 4 years ago, from 10 years ago. And he's not even socialist, so.
I hate to cite any of the gambling websites, but I was just looking on Polymarket, and they have Will Lawrence at a 99% chance of victory. So I think that gives you a pretty good sense, even though that race has narrowed now. He's got like a 10-point lead with 20% of the vote in. The people who are betting on this at least feel very confident in what is going to ultimately happen there.
What do the gamblers think about McKinney?
I'm just looking it up. 97% chance
for McKinney to win.
Yeah.
Wow. That really surprises me.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's up in the results right now. He's up by like a lot. So he's up currently with what's in 32 points, but there's still only 2% of the vote in.
Right.
So
yeah. But
they're taking their sweet time over there.
Yes.
And that drop is going to be very consequential for Abdul as well. I think that's why they haven't called the race yet, because there's, it's a Detroit district he's running in. And so, if Haley like wildly overperforms in Detroit with what comes in, then she would still have, I guess, a shot here, which is why that, they're waiting on that race to see what happens.
Okay. And then one other point on that, to follow up on what Sirota was saying about and what you were saying about the corruption. Oh, hey, look who we got here. Former Congressman Jamal Bowman.
How are you, sir?
Hey, what's up? How y'all doing? Yeah, I can
doing
hear
good.
You. Sorry about the noise. I'm on 215th Street in the Bronx.
It sounds good, actually. We don't hear a lot of
Okay,
noise.
hold on. There's a train going by, so it might be loud. 1 second.
No worries. So we were just saying the race hasn't been called yet, but Abdul seems to be, performing, doing what he needs to do. Your thoughts, Congressman, on the impact and the import of this race, why this one is so significant?
Yeah, sorry it's so dark here. Let me see if I can turn on some lights. Now I'm in a lift. Ryan contacted me, when I was in the street traveling in New York City. It's
well lit.
I mean, what's great. First of all, good to see you both. Thank you for having me on.
Likewise.
I mean, it's great, man. I mean, it's
what is what is the divide, and what needs to happen to get there? Like, and we're going to see some more Detroit vote drop pretty soon, and which
Yeah.
speaks to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's much less of a divide with younger Black voters, much less of a divide, just like it's less of a divide with just younger voters in general.
Mhm.
We all, and even though I'm 50, I still consider myself pretty young,
Yeah.
we all support progressive policies, right? Like we want Medicare for all. We want big money out of politics. We want universal childcare. We want those things. Older, more establishment Black voters want those things too. But I think there's just been such a conditioning and such habits as it relates to supporting establishment politics and believing in the sort of legacy of like the civil rights movement and civil rights politics. And I think Jim Clyburn represents that. I think Hakeem Jeffries represents that. I think there's just is more habitual in supporting the incrementalism of that versus, what can sound scary and radical in some of the things, I may say, or Zoran or Abdul or Corey Bush or what have you. And so, yeah, I mean, with the younger voters is going great. With the older voters, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of dialogue, a lot of listening, and then there's also bad faith actors in the Black community who are like capitalist, conservative, APAC aligned people who are like driving a wedge between more reasonable establishment Black voters and progressives. Like there's an active campaign against that. So my job, I believe, is to just always speak out and speak up as it relates to that and call that out when I see it. And so that's what I've been trying to do.
So I don't know if you saw this, but Corey Bush, they did call the race in favor of Wesley Bell, and you and she really APAC went all in, most expensive primaries that had ever been run. And so while in Michigan, it's looking very much like Will Lawrence and Donovan McKinney and Abdul El-Sayed are all on a path to victory. In that district, it went the other way. And I wonder if you have any thoughts on that or any insights into why it was more difficult, more uphill race for Corey Bush.
Yeah, first of all, it's heartbreaking. I love Corey Bush deeply. She is my sister. She is my friend. I love her. And she's just such a fighter, and she just represents exactly the kind of person and people we need in Congress. And so it's just heartbreaking to hear that. They bombarded that district again with just a lot of ads and a lot of propaganda against Corey. And they've been going after Corey, and not just APAC, but like DOJ investigations and all kind of stuff has just been coming after Corey ever since she left Congress. So she's been constantly under attack, and they weaponized that in the ads. And so when I was on the ground there was great energy on the ground in terms of like people on the doors, supporting her, but the ads were working, like when I would talk to voters, they would bring up something they heard in the ads, like, oh, she doesn't do her job, she's not showing up for votes, or something like that was one.
That was their main attack ad. She missed too many votes.
Correct, and the people
and she had
there
COVID
were
a couple times or something. Yeah.
Correct, right? And the people there were believing it, right? And so that was surprising to me because, like in my district in 2024, for example, they were coming with a lot of propaganda, but the Black people there didn't believe it. And so we still won Black people by a big margin in 2024. So it's just devastating. And I really want our movement to like really wrap our arms around Corey and support her in whatever way we can, because when we lost in 2024, there was no sort of safety net for us. There was no like emotional landing spot for us. And we had to kind of rebuild ourselves kind of from the ground up. And so I just want to put that out there. I don't know what that looks like, but it's really important for us to do that, because Corey's a champion. She'll always be a champion for us, and we got to continue to love on her and support her.
One question, Logan, actually, our data expert had, which I think is a good one, is you've been in the House, you know these people. Are they going to be looking at these primaries and changing perhaps some of the ways that we vote, that they vote? We already saw this a little bit with the Massey Amendment, where suddenly you had 100 Democrats who decided that, oh, maybe we shouldn't be sending all this aid to Israel. Do you think we're going to see those kind of moments from people who are putting their finger in the wind?
Yes, I think we are, because a lot of them are not fighters. I don't want to call them cowards because I want to be nice, but they're not fighters. And so you cannot ignore what has happened this cycle. You just can't ignore it. And, Justin Pearson, God willing, is going to win his primary on Thursday, and he's going to be on his way to the general. We still have Charles Booker. We still have multiple races in California. We have a race for Providence mayor in Providence, Rhode Island. And so we're not even done yet. And yeah, I mean, the people in Congress are going to, they're already probably calling Hakeem left. Like, what do we do? Like, how do we respond to this? Give us some guidance. The DCCC is losing their shit. They have no idea how to respond to this because they've bent the knee to Citizens United and special interests and big money in politics. And so they don't even know how to run a campaign like Abdul just ran or Daria Lisa just ran or Malak Kara. They don't know how to do that. And so, yeah, they're gonna try to figure it out, but it's gonna be interesting.
We're going to have Hassan Piker, your buddy, on shortly if you want to stick around, if you can, and chat with him. But before he comes on, I want to ask you a question about Will Lawrence. I don't know how closely you followed this race, but there was this fascinating moment where they pulled up a podcast that he was on in 2024 with a guy, I forget his name, Kenyatta something. Who's a black internationalist who was making the. Oh, can you hear me? I think we might be losing. Oh, we might have lost him. Wait till he comes back. If he comes back for that one. Looks like
Ryan, can you hear me?
Yeah, I
we got you back.
Okay, I think I know where you were going with that, but can you just repeat the question again? I think I know where you.
Yeah, there was this podcast appearance where he and his kind of podcast host were telling this story. They were talking about Joe Biden going to Morehouse to talk about to give a commencement speech. And the guy was saying how ashamed he was that Morehouse was allowing its moral credibility to be used to whitewash a genocide. All of the credibility that the Black freedom struggle had built up over decades now being used as a weapon in service of, some of the most awful things you could possibly imagine. And Will was saying yes, and Will then added, it makes it very difficult for quote unquote white progressives, and that really got him in a lot of trouble. Who are trying to make a point, and then they run up against, say, Joe Biden speaking at Morehouse. Like, how dare you, how dare you try to challenge this moral authority? That doesn't seem to have hurt him in the election so far. But I'm curious for your broader kind of analysis of the point that he was making and how that point can be made in a way that is like received in like a constructive way.
Yeah. It's a tough thing, right?
He actually started his comment with, "I shouldn't even be talking about this because this isn't my place."
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a tough thing, man. I mean, I don't know Will that well. I haven't been able to talk to him that much throughout this cycle. But when I do talk to him, and I'm sure I will, I'll tell him probably like, maybe chill and don't say something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like in that moment at that time, because it's like, it gets dicey, man, when you got white people talking about black people shit. You know what I'm saying? It just gets super dicey. Like when women talk about women shit, like I'm quiet until they ask me a question, and then I'm very careful how I answer. You know what I'm saying? Because like you just gotta know your lane a little bit. You know what I mean? But I mean, and what he was saying like can do more harm than good in terms of like the gaps the gaps we're trying to bridge here,
Right.
and the divides we're trying to close. And I know that's not what he means to do. And so that my advice would be like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. In terms of the Morehouse thing, I didn't realize that his comment was related to that. Um, th- th- you know, it's interesting because Morehouse probably in their mind, and I didn't go to Morehouse. I wasn't, polished enough to get into Morehouse, but Morehouse is in their mind. It's like we have an ex-president coming to give a commencement speech that like increases our status and stature and credibility. They're probably not even thinking about whitewashing a genocide.
Right.
Like as a university. Now that's part of the challenge because Morehouse generally, and I'm not saying everybody in Morehouse, but Morehouse and HBCUs are part of the Black establishment, right? And so the Divine Nine, HBCUs, the Black Church, those three things make up the Black establishment. That is, aligned with the CBC. Many members take APAC money, right? And many members are not outspoken on the genocide. And so that's where we have this conflict with Black progressives, who for me, I'm a descendant of like the Malcolm X and the Fred Hampton and the, Kwame Tures of the world and Angela Davis, like I consider myself as someone from that tradition, versus the more establishment tradition. And that's where the conflict is. And doesn't mean we can't move forward. I just think it's a generational thing. And I think it's also a class thing as well, as it relates to like, the higher ed Black establishment versus like the brothers on the street that I like to talk to. You know what I mean? So anyway, but there's definitely space for a bigger conversation in that. And that's why I wrote my book and I want to come on both of your shows to talk about it because it's the perfect time to have the conversation about like, what was my Black experience like in America over the last 50 years that led to me, being this person in Congress speaking out for Palestine and all the other issues I speak about. Like, how did I get here? And
Yeah.
What part of my journey led me to this? So
Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, who and campaigned for, she said she wants to be part of the Congressional Black Caucus. I know originally there was a little bit of from the CBC, like, I'm not sure if we're going to take her or not, but I'm curious for your view of what that experience was like for you, what you think it'll be like for her, as there will be a lot of awareness of her different approach to politics versus the more Black establishment approach to politics.
well, first of all, they should absolutely take her. That should be a no-brainer. They Richie Torres is a member of the CBC. And Daria Lisa is much Blacker than him. So what the hell are we talking about here? Yeah, they're gonna take her. I mean, we'll see, right? Because when I
they
was
said they'd take
there,
her. Yeah.
yeah, of course, yeah, of course. When I was there, it was very frustrating because, in their defense, I'm coming in with no governing experience whatsoever. It's my first time being an elected official. And I'm coming from the education space where my job is to serve the needs of kids 5 days a week, 6.5 hours a day. It's a very practitioner, pragmatic, practical job. I'm not in the business of going to meetings and talking and not doing anything. So I would get very frustrated at the CBC meetings and many of the other meetings in Congress because there'd be a lot of talk and kids were still dying in the streets and we weren't getting much done. It might be different now for Daria Lisa because she's coming in where Ilhan is there and Ayanna is there and Summer's there, and you have other members there who are more progressive, for lack of a better term. And so, I'm sure she's going to form a strong bond with them. and 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 do great work with them. And so, and I hope there's conversation about the formation of a new caucus. I know there were whispers about it when I was there, like a squad caucus or something like that.
Yeah.
I think now with the numbers coming in with like Adam Hamaway and Frederick Hayes III and Malak Keros and Dariliza and Claire and hopefully Brad, like I think there's an I would encourage them to do it because one of my regrets from my time in Congress is I didn't understand how important it was to build that kind of power in Congress. And one of the ways to do that is by forming a caucus like that. So if they all come together, squad plus these new members, and form like a power caucus, whether you call it a DSA caucus or squad caucus, that would be incredible for them to do something like that. So I hope they really consider it.
There could be up to 24 or more in that caucus at this point.
Yeah.
Which is,
thank you, sir.
That's a
I'm listening. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the difference between a bill passing or not passing, and also it forces the leadership and the Capitol Hill press and the entire kind of world
Yes.
pay attention to them.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? It forces the press to pay attention to them. And this is very funny. I'm talking to you in pitch black right now. Don't worry, I'll be in light in a second. It forces the press to pay attention to them. It forces the press to ask them questions and to get them on the record about different bills. And that is important. It's important for them to have. It expands their bully and strengthens it from individual members to now them being part of this caucus. And so I just think that so again, I hope they strongly consider it as something that I definitely done if I knew what I was doing when I first got in.
Right.
You're breaking up a little bit. I think we're gonna let you go. Thank you so much for jumping on with us, Jamal. We appreciate it. And I think we got Hassan Piker coming up in a couple minutes as well, but very interesting to hear his thoughts and reflections on his time in Congress and how it was for him and what he would do differently if he could go back. And, I have to think like the fact that we see Chris Robb and Malat hanging out together at Abdul's victory party, I think they're already definitely thinking in that direction, which is going to make things a lot different than how they have been in the past.
Hey, by the way, guys, we have two major amendments where I think the election has been called. One is in Kansas that would require elections for the state Supreme Court. That was an attempt to weaken potentially future Democratic governors and have the judiciary be a little bit less independent from the electorate. That failed overwhelmingly, 67% to 33%. Now, that failure pales in comparison to what happened in Missouri, where they were trying to make it just about incredibly hard, if not almost impossible, to have citizen-initiated amendments passed successfully in state constitution. It would have required them to pass in every single one of the 8 congressional districts. That failed 80-20 so far, with 27% of the vote, and it's already been
wow.
They
Wow.
really united Missouri.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was tracking both of those ballot initiatives a little bit too. So I watched that with great interest. That is very good to hear.
All right, we're on?
Yep, you're on.
Guys. All right, cool. We're here with Hassan Piker in Detroit, Michigan.
What's going on?
How you feeling, man?
What's going on? How you feeling?
Seems like it's a pretty good night. What the hell? Why am I on TV? That's crazy. Oh, damn. I yap a lot.
We know.
Yeah.
We're aware.
I'm still yapping. It's been 7 hours today on the broadcast.
Yeah, you've been here for the past few days, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Tell me how's the energy?
I mean, it's been pretty good. There's a lot of excitement on the ground. I think people are just excited to finally vote for something rather than take a defensive posture in their voting. We oppose harm reduction voting. Although it does work in theory, it doesn't work in practice. And we've seen that in Michigan, perhaps, with the Donald Trump victory. Now, hopefully we're going to correct that mistake, and we're never going to repeat it ever again.
Aside from Abdul that you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on a lot of races outside of Abdul's. Many of them are here tonight. Many of the victories, the early victories, have compounded upon itself to build a much more robust movement across the country, and we're going to carry that victory into the general election.
Yeah. All right. And tell me, how do you think this is going to play out in the general election?
I think Abdul is going to do very well in the general election because, I mean, we're talking like he won. I'm talking like he won. He hasn't won yet, technically, but I do suspect that he has a fairly good chance. And it's going to be the same exact thing in the general. I think people oppose Trumpism. They hate it. They hate Mike Rogers. Mike Rogers is a carpetbagger from Florida. In many respects, it's a perfect matchup against Abdul El-Sayed. And I think he's going to defeat him thoroughly.
All right, last thing. Why do you like the doctor so much?
He's a stud. he's awesome. I mean, he speaks truth to power. What's not to love?
All right. Thanks.
So can we get one more? Oh, that's it for them. Okay. One thing that I was tracking very closely for either of you is, I mean, Hassan really ended up being, his appearance with Abdul ended up being a pivot point in this race. Truly. If you look at the, Kalshir poly market odds, which again, low to do, but it is what it is. Abdul was at maybe 28% chance of winning. And then he does this appearance with Hassan. Whoever decides to make this a central litmus test issue, do you condemn Hassan Piker? Mallory McMorrow famously takes the side of, yes, I would never appear with him, blah, blah, blah. It becomes very clarifying in the race. It makes it impossible for her to hold on to this sort of Goldilocks position that she was trying to capture. And it's basically nothing but a few little blips up and down, but basically nothing but up for Abdul after that appearance with Hassan. And the truly shocking thing to me is that they tried to do the same thing in the Zoran race with Andrew Cuomo, and it didn't work there and it backfired there too. So they decided to make what is probably Haley Stevens and ultimately Mallory McMorrow's worst issue for them, where they're the furthest apart from the Democratic base. They decided to highlight that and make it a litmus test issue. And I am surprised though at how much of an impact that ended up truly having on the tenor and the complexion of this race.
Yeah, I don't think it worked for two reasons, right? One you just said, but the second reason is before 2024, I think there was a lot more pearl clutching about talking to people that were controversial, that have said things people might find offensive. That's kind of gone now because a lot of people think that's part of the reason why Democrats lost, is that they need to be a lot more comfortable talking to everyone, and you can't just talk to conventional media figures and be able to win. So I don't think that really motivated people in the center either. And obviously, it sent a signal about McMorrow that probably made her look more pro-Israel than she actually was. And I think it matters beyond just the voters who that's a decisive issue, because for a lot of young voters, right, like some of them are saying, how can I trust you on healthcare or on these other issues if on this issue that feels so clear, like an immoral stance to me, if you're taking on that, like you're not going to fight for me on everything else.
What are your thoughts, Ryan, about Hassan and how his appearance ended up being this pivot point?
I've never seen anything like it. It was just an unprecedented moment in campaigning. It'll like, if there were still universities after AI wipes everything out, like it will be taught and in like how not to do campaigning in a three-way race if you're trying to run down the middle lane. And she took it way too far. Like if you remember, she compared Hassan Piker to Nick Fuentes, which maybe she thinks was necessary for some of like the Haley Stevens base to hear or something. Like I don't actually even understand the political logic there, because if you're completely ignorant of everything that's going on here, just the fact that his name is Hassan, you're probably racist, and that should be enough right there. You don't need to call him Nick Fuentes. But for anybody who was paying attention and who has any familiarity with him at all, they know he's not Nick Fuentes. And that just made you look like a cynical, lying politician. And the bottom fell out. It was extraordinary. You had Third Way, with this, corporate funded think tank that's been around for 40 years at this point, write an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, drawing a line in the sand that, you Democrats, you're either with us or you're with Hassan Piker, which Hassan Piker was never demanding. And Democrats looked at it and were like, okay, we're with him. It was incredible. It's not the same thing as the marriage equality fight, but there's an interesting parallel. For decades, the Democratic politicians just didn't want to touch the issue. They just a liberal Democrat would say they were for civil unions. A conservative Democrat would say it's not up to them. It's not up to me. Shouldn't be a federal issue or whatever. They just didn't want to touch the issue. And then in 2004, Karl Rove deliberately polarized the question to try to make Democrats look extreme and to try to drive out. He put marriage equality amendments, anti-marriage equality amendments on constitutional ballots in like Ohio and elsewhere to try to drive out his evangelical base. That polarized the issue, and it forced Democrats to take a stand on the question. And the Democratic base is fundamentally like an ethical and a moral people. If you put a civil rights question in front of them, they're going to polarize around supporting the civil rights issue. And there's a lot going on when it comes to Israel-Palestine that is different. But one thing that is similar is that the party wanted to just not talk about it. Say, I support Israel. Israel has a right to exist. I support Israel. Support blah blah blah. Just say the lines and then move on, and cash the checks and not get checks, money spent against you. It was really AIPAC in a lot of ways that kind of forced the polarization of the issue. And in this case, it was Third Way and Mallory McMorrow. They forced Democrats and the Democratic base to kind of take us to address the question, call the question, where are you on this question? And Democrats, they're not always gonna immediately do the right thing, but Democratic voters eventually are going to be driven to the moral core of the question.
Ryan, do you think there'll be any AIPAC soul searching? If they drop however many tens of millions of dollars into this race and end up coming up short, are they going to, are they going to think about their strategy? Are they going to think about their approach of, you can't deviate from us even 1 inch? Because, in some instances, Valerie Fouché is a good example where she said, okay, fine, it's a genocide. And she was able to hold on. And she's going to be more receptive, at least, to them than her opponent, Nida Alam, likely would have been. So do you think there will be any of that discussion going on for them of this isn't working? We are about to lose. We are toxic in Democratic primaries. We, everybody our money is poisonous to these candidates. This is not working. We're going to be left just with, the Republicans and eventually potentially a dwindling number of them as well.
Yeah. There is some amount of money beyond which even the richest people don't want burned for not just for no reason, but to backfire, bring condemnation upon them. Nothing good coming out of this except for the consultants who made the ads and the ad buyers who took their cut. And congratulations to the television station owners in Ann Arbor and Detroit and around Michigan. But otherwise, this was a disaster for them. And there's only so many times you can do that. And your point about Valerie Fouché is a good one. Maxine Dexter is another example. They go in and they spend millions of dollars to support these candidates. And once they're in office, they switch. So they're losing a lot of races, and the ones they're winning, they're losing those people once they're in office. So
hey, Ryan, does AIPAC have a lot more money this cycle, or it does?
They've already hit 100+ million, which is about what they spent last time.
So
it looks like they're spending more this. They're going to spend more this cycle.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be the most money they'll ever have, because for a lot of people, they view this as like the hit or miss cycle.
Yeah. So I believe we have State Senator Albert Kawas here.
We're not hearing anything right
Got to
now.
Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yep, we got you now.
All right, so we're here. We're in Detroit. We're with Abir Kawas. We're at Abdul's watch party, probably election victory party. We'll see. Oh, Abir talking to me.
Can we get an update on some of the state Senate races? Like how are the lower levels things looking?
I just saw Donovan's numbers, and he's looking very, very well, much higher than expected. I think I saw him at like 62 or 64%. But he really pulled out. The numbers are looking good for him. I didn't see the other numbers recently.
Okay. Good enough. Yeah. But yes, state senator, what's how's she feeling about it so far?
Abir, so how are you feeling about the campaign leading up to this, the watch party, confidence?
Man, this sound is brutal.
Can you guys hear me still?
Not really. You want to come back to us later if you can find a
How's
place
that
that's
now?
a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's a little rough.
That's a state senator who represents Sunnyside and like Queens. So like in other words, what you're seeing here is not just incoming members of Congress, but you've got DSA state senators from New York going out to Michigan, really really treating this as a serious national operation, which it is. Like this is we're talking about federal office here. So yes, they represent Michigan or they represent the 7th district, but it is a national kind of federal body. So it's more than appropriate, I think, that you're seeing this federal solidarity. Looks like Stevens pulled to within 6%.
Yeah, so can we let's pull this up, because we've got also some vote in from Detroit in Wayne County, and we're up to 4% of the votes in Detroit. And actually Abdul with a narrow lead there, 0.2%, which is wild if it holds. But yeah, we've got a narrowing here with 24% of the vote in. And I will say over on Polymarket, his odds ticked down from 98% to 95%. So, Haley still has an outside chance of pulling this off. Logan, what are you seeing in some of these vote dumps here?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It really looked like a disaster for her early on. And I think she now might have a slim chance. Also, though, Detroit famously takes forever to count these votes. This is part of the reason why Michigan took forever, along with Pennsylvania and others in 2020, to be able to call. So you're going to have to be patient on that part of the state.
I'm taking a look over at Will Lawrence's district. That one has really narrowed. Now he's up by 6 points on his nearest competitor. That's with a third of the vote in. So that one is a lot tighter than it was previously. Go ahead.
Yeah, his campaign is still pretty confident about what's remaining out there.
What's out there?
But yeah, it's tightening up. Interestingly, the Navy SEAL is down in 3rd place now, behind Bridget Brink, who also had millions of dollars, behind her.
Yeah, what's her story? I've forgotten.
I
she's the
forget.
ambassador to the Ukraine. Yeah, I got a story.
Oh,
She-
okay, they're perfect. Yeah, where do they've got all the perfect candidates? Democratic
Yeah, I mean
primary.
that's a stacked primary. She famously testified back during the first impeachment, and showed herself really well to the American people, and so that's part of why this race is going to be a little tougher. And a lot of folks were saying, okay, one of those two should have dropped out and endorsed the other. Well, I mean, like you can see why they didn't, because one right now is at 31.6 and the other one's at 30.8. They were basically neck and neck the entire time. So kind of hard to
Yeah, there
pull
was
that.
nobody who was really pulling away.
This was Will's only path to victory, really, was the hope that both of these candidates would stay and that he would stay potent enough and that they would each stay, viable so that they wouldn't drop out. And that he'd, be able to edge them both out. So, it's a very tricky obstacle course to run from the beginning. But so far they have. But it's also amazing to think about two like made in a lab candidates for Democrats. A Navy SEAL who carried Obama's nuclear football and the Ukraine ambassador stood up to Trump.
Yeah, they're almost too good.
Will Lawrence beating them both, right?
Yeah, who's never run for office before and just kind of coming out of nowhere and making his case. We haven't talked that much about the the data center angle, which I just think in the general election is going to be even more of an important issue for Will and for other candidates as well, and a real differentiator from their Republican opponents in most regards.
Well, there's something interesting happening in Kansas. Most people thought that Ethan Corson, who is the more moderate candidate for the governor primary and endorsed by Laura Kelly, was most likely to win. But State Senator Cindy Holscher is currently up 47.5 to 40.5 for 58%. And now the reason I bring this up is because Cindy Holscher has called for a moratorium on data centers and put that front and center in her campaign. So whether she wins or not, we don't ultimately know yet. But her surprising potency is kind of another win for the strength of that movement.
Let me give you a little bit of analysis here again from Zachary Danini on the Abdul Stevens race. This is the guy who said his vibes were plus 14 for Abdul earlier. Those vibes have shifted. He says this is narrowing at a rapid rate, will come down to Wayne County. That's Detroit. Stevens is vastly outperforming expectations across a lot of wider, less urban areas. El Sayed exceeding his targets in Kent, Washtenaw, and Oakland. Stevens exceeding elsewhere. He also had another tweet here. Why is the race not called yet? What keeps Stevens alive? She's doing much better in mail ballots, which have been lagging behind a bit in reporting. She's doing well enough in these small, mid-sized counties to where winning Detroit by a lot would pull her close. So that is what's kind of keeping her alive at this point, is if she were to overwhelmingly win Detroit, then she would have that outside chance.
Yeah, but how much you think Logan should have to win it by?
I just don't know that off the cuff. I'm sorry to say, Ryan. I don't want to give you a bad number. Maybe by like 10.
Because right now it's about even-ish, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But with only 4% of the vote in.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not impossible that she could win it by 10. Like, that's certainly within the realm of possibility. Anyway, we'll continue to watch. McKinney.
Ryan, I don't want to butter you up too much or anything, but I just thought you should know in my group chat, which I have some people who have watched it. My friend literally wrote down the entire thing you said about how the Democratic base is fundamentally ethical and moral based, and that the voters will get to the moral choices even if the politicians didn't. So I don't think I've ever seen that in any group text that I've been in where my friends are watching. So credit to you.
Well, I'm buttering up the Democratic base. Your friend is shining light there. Giant love fest.
Amazing.
So McKinney 5% in, still ahead. Very
overwhelmingly. Yeah, and it's interesting because that's, some of the same Wayne County, would be some of the overlap with the Wayne County results that we're seeing in the Abdul race. And so there are a lot of voters who are definitely voting for Haley Stevens and Donovan McKinney for him to have that overwhelming result.
Yeah, and I think we all underestimate how much this is going to happen because the people that are really politically engaged, like us, tend to think more consistently around our politics, but voters have very unusual heterodox opinions all the time between their different candidates.
They say they've got the sound and signal fixed. When they come back in, let's test whether that's true or not. Here we go.
Check, check.
Look at that. It does sound better.
Check, we're on.
Yep. Much better. Who are you?
You can hear me right now?
Yep, I got you.
Amazing. We're back here with a beer. I don't know if you heard what she said before.
Nope.
Want me to ask her? Okay, so we're here with the beer Kawas. City Council, you just won the primary out in Queens. And just tell us why you're here, what's the energy?
Hey, it's an amazing energy here. I just won a New York State Democratic primary race, and I always said during my campaign that this is not about one candidate, it's about a whole movement. And that's what we're seeing here in Michigan. What we had in New York, in the left winning, is sustained all across the nation. It's what voters want. And Abdul is so close to winning. You can feel it in the room. And we know that this is really going to shake up politics in this country, and we're excited for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen so many people come from out of state who are either in elected office or soon to be in elected office, and also bring a lot of their staff and other volunteers. Like, what did you guys see when it came to volunteers on the ground? Like,
Honestly, I actually have two of the lead organizers for the volunteers. If you want to get them on.
Yeah. See if
Sebastian, Sharif. So this is Sebastian and Sharif. These are two of the organizers. They put together a whole house. A lot of out-of-state volunteers came. There must have been 30 at least. There were multiple cars canvassing the neighborhoods. Can you guys just tell us what your work has been like here?
Yeah, so, a movement is about moving people. Organized people are always going to defeat organized money. We wanted to create a space where we can be in service to the talent that is feeling sort of this ethical shift and this drive for betterment in the United States, this drive for peace, justice, solidarity, stewardship, and compassion. So we wanted to be in service to those who are feeling moved to be part of this movement, to come here and talk to folks, to educate folks, and also to create content. I mean, it's beautiful to see the next generation of campaigners, not only talking to individuals, but also talking to, posting and making things go viral. So, just by being in service to travelers, we're able to host so much talent under one roof and learn from one another and help things scale up.
So what's the energy, the experience on the ground been like for you, Sebastian?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Columbia encampment organizer, and I'm very proud of that fact. I believe that there is a real sort of power in student movements, in student organizing, the organizing of Gen Z, and we really saw that on the ground here in Michigan, right? The hostel is predominantly younger people. It's predominantly people of Gen Z, younger content creators, people under the age of 25. And they're able to all collaborate together here, be in one house, be in one canvas together, organize.
What the fuck?
What's going
It's tough with all those phones in there. We'll figure this out. But the point he was making at the very end, I've actually been intrigued by as a new development in campaigning. I don't know, Logan, if you might have noticed this too, but there's now a real incentive for people to travel to states where there's a lot of energy around a race because they're making content out of it. So they have they it's like they're it's not, and Hassan is part, he's building a movement here of candidates. He's going around, but there's all of these like kind of, I don't know what you call them, rank and file content creators, who are either on their way up or are making some small amount of, a living or trying to scrape by doing it. But who see this as like useful to do for their audience that they're building. Which then, so they're not only that's not only sending volunteers out to the state that are going door to door, it then creates content at every doorstop, which then has an exponential reach, which obviously Haley Stevens understands the value of it, because we saw those people she was paying in South Carolina to say that, what, she's growing on me or whatever, like just like Tom Steyer was, had his whole group of influencers. But if you can create what the race seems to show, if you can create enough national momentum, you attract then content creators to your campaign because they see value in their engagement with it, which is a interesting kind of asymmetric weapon that somebody that has good ideas but not as much money might be able to bring.
Yeah, look, when I was 24, 25 and volunteering in races, I had to give my friends a whole seminar before they could understand why they should volunteer in like a race in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or whatever, phone banks, right? It's a lot easier when you can speak to millions of people, and that is a self-reinforcing power that will get people more engaged into your content. So that's pretty interesting. I hadn't seen that, Ryan, but it makes a lot of sense.
Have 6% of Wayne County in now, and Haley Stevens still with just a narrow lead of 49.1 to 47.9 in Detroit in Wayne County. So a little bit of an update for you there. One thing I wanted to get you guys to react to is, Mike Rogers is anticipating that Abdul is going to be the nominee, and he already put out an AI slopified ad against him. So let me go ahead and play this and get you guys a reaction to the direction that he is taking here.
They'll never see us coming.
First of all, I want to just point out, I guess this is AOC, although it really doesn't look like her, but you've got Bernie, Zoran, and AOC, 3 actually rather popular politicians. So those are your boogeymen. So let's start there.
And making them look cool.
Democrats.
Yeah. Don't let communism into Michigan. What do you think,
the
Ryan?
communist Romans?
That might do okay
a lot of
around.
mixed metaphors going on here, really. I'm not sure how well thought out it was.
I don't think that'll have reached beyond like 65-year-olds on Facebook.
Yeah, who are already voting for Mike Rogers, who are watching Fox News on here, and it's just been a nonstop like socialism, Red Scare panic the entire night. So I think they'll already be pretty well convinced that maybe Abdul isn't the direction they want to go in.
Yeah, that does look like the Facebook slop that sometimes my mom shows me on her Facebook feed.
Yeah, I mean, I do think like in terms of how to go against him, I just don't know that this, he's a socialist, he's a communist, without providing some concrete examples of policies that people would dislike. I'm not sure that it packs the punch that it once did. But, I think that's what Republicans are really betting on at this point, because all of the macro indicators, Logan, are that they're in a very bad position. Polls have Democrats up on the generic ballot. I just saw polling that has Democratic identification has surpassed Republicans, has retaken the lead there. Obviously, economic issues, gas prices are high, Trump approval historic low. The war is extremely unpopular. All of those things going against them. So in a sense, this ad that Mike Rogers threw together against Abdul al-Sayed, that's what they're really betting the farm on in terms of holding on to the House, which I think is probably unlikely to happen, but potentially being able to hold on to power in the Senate, which would be very significant for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is the overall strategy. That's everything we're hearing from the leaks, and that's everything we're seeing from the national parties. Just go as negative as possible for a bunch of these candidates. And, Mike Rogers is trying to avoid talking about major issues. He was asked about Iran, and I believe, if memory serves me right, he said that wasn't relevant to the election. And so I think he's hoping that he can just
Great response.
torpedo. I know he's going to have to do better than that.
Yeah, and the problem for him is, Trump is profoundly unpopular. I should look up what his approval rating is in the state. And he's going to keep doing insane things. And every day, Mike Rogers is going to have to answer for those increasingly and more insane things that Trump is up to.
Yeah, and here's also the danger zone, right? Right now for Republicans, right now Democrats have like a 7-point lead nationally in the generic ballot. But if you look at Trump's approval rating, which is 36.5 nationally in my average, that's not great, obviously. But what's a much bigger red flag is the 20.3% that say they strongly approve. This is vastly different from the last time he was president. Because back then, if you like Trump, you love Trump. But basically, we see an almost 50-50 split between strongly and somewhat approve. And so if that holds on, you don't know how many of those guys are going to turn out, right? And so if there ends up being a turnout disadvantage, then Democrats could do a lot better. The other way is if the people that dislike Trump would normally prefer Republicans, if a higher share of those guys end up breaking for Democrats who don't turn out as well, that could also be dangerous for Republicans.
Ryan, what do you think of the Republican Red Scare strategy?
I mean, I don't know. It's just so hard for me to believe that people think communism is coming to America. Like, what would make you think that? Like, you drive around Michigan, like, there's no communism coming here. It's just strip malls. It's strip malls and farms. Like, what does communism look like? In just a whole bunch of sprawl. It's like, and El Sayed is going to. He said he's going to keep calling him $5 Rogers for the price of gas. And for how corrupt he is. He's trying to use that to tie like both things together. And Trump doesn't seem to be able to extract himself from this war. I think last week we drew down a little bit less from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve than we did the week before, but we're still drawing it down. Like, things are not getting better. And so if we stay at $4 or go higher throughout election day, warning people that the guy's a communist, I don't think it's going to land the same way than if we're back to $2.50 a gallon and no inflation for 10 years and wages slightly growing.
The other thing I think about too is they really went all in with that rhetoric with Zoran. Like, there were going to be red lines and there were going to be there was Sharia law, and I don't know what else was on the menu for New York City. I mean, it was really apocalyptic. They reached deep into the Red Scare bag of tricks to throw everything they could at him, and he wins. And now he's governing, and he's just getting more popular over time. So
yeah, the only lines were to get into Nick's watch parties.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So when you use this very apocalyptic rhetoric and then the guy is governing and it's like, oh, he's just like doing things that everyone would want him to do, like decreasing small business regulation and actually cutting waste and fraud in a way that Doge promised but failed to do. And, governing in a way where he's paying attention to the quality of life in the city. And then, of course, delivering on the key things that he ran on as well. Then the next time you run that same playbook and say, oh, but this time there's going to be red lines and executions and Sharia law, et cetera, it's just not going to land as much since you already tried that. And we see what the guy is doing. And I don't think there's Sharia law in New York City last time I checked.
Right.
So, I think the critique loses some of its punch too. And the other thing I would say, Ryan, is a lot of the DSA candidates, like Abdul, is very talented. Many of them are, though, because they have an ideology, they have a worldview, and they're much more comfortable in the sort of podcast free-for-all world. So they can go on a Fox News or they can go on a CNN and they can handle themselves well. And anytime you can do that, then you start to puncture the caricature of whatever you're supposedly being, this, you know, scary, monstrous person that you're being painted as.
Yeah. Right. He's done, you know, he's faced, it probably doesn't help that he's had $80 million spent in negative ads against him. Thank you, Chuck Schumer. But it does help that he's kind of gone through that gauntlet, and he's had a lot of experience dealing with the criticism and trying to turn it around and turn it back towards money out of politics, money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all. So, you know, Mike Rogers, was it 2024 he ran against Alyssa Slotkin? Would that have been 20? And only lost by what, 20,000 votes?
He did pretty well. I mean, Slotkin was a strong candidate. I mean, he did do worse than Donald Trump, obviously. So it's kind of hard to separate, I guess, how strong he was. But I think he outperformed
much more. You know, it was a
expectations.
much more Republican year, 2024.
Yes. Okay, so I think I figured out the communism thing. And I actually think it has something to do with the strong approval thing. It's more of an argument, if it's going to be used effectively, that is aimed at unsatisfied Trump supporters, because I agree with you that there's a stretch of how much you're going to convince, you know, someone in the middle of that who's choosing between the parties. But if you're someone that is already watching Fox News and traditionally in the past really like Trump, maybe that's an argument that can be made to get you to vote, even though you don't like the rising prices or the Iran war. So I think it might be a mitigating strategy, sort of like we saw with Trump's immigration caravan strategy in 2018. I don't think that won the Senate, but it helped them. It may or may not have helped them hold on in some of the red state Senate races.
So checking in on the Abdul results, here we go. So again, race has narrowed. It's like roughly 6 points. We can see another update there. Let me go ahead and take a look at Detroit and see if we've gotten anything more in there. Now we're at 7% of the vote in Detroit, which is in, and has Haley Stevens at 49.5%, Abdul at 47.5%. Who knows what that margin is going to end up being, since it's only 7% in. I will say that's not a very strong result for her there if that holds on. However, we see her outperforming in some of these more rural areas based on what is in thus far. I took a look at the Poly Market odds, and he has, you know, at one point he had like nearly 100% chance of victory. Now it has slipped down to a 91% chance. You still would definitely rather be him than her, but she does have now an 8 or 9% chance as these results have come in. So that is the state of play in terms of Abdul. Can go ahead and look at the 7th congressional district. If we take a look at that, Will Lawrence has now about a 7% lead. That's with 40% of the vote in. Let me go ahead and pull up the 13th district. That is Donovan McKinney. McKinney has a 19-point lead. Again, this is Detroit, so this one is still very slow, only 7% of the vote in here, but continues to maintain quite a wide lead over Sri Thanadar. So that is the state of play on those races. But Logan, what do you make of the tightening and where we're at with regard to the Senate race?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little closer than we expected, but I still think he'll win. I would also say when it comes to Poly Market and Kalshi, where I'm seeing some of things on Kalshi, look, the thing about this is every single time they get a little ahead of their skis. We saw that with the Tallarico Crockett race, where they had him at like 97% or something on election day. When I think people struggle with assessing probability to the point of looking at the chance of an upset until you're really seeing the results start to come in. And who wants to bet on like a 1% chance or something? You know what I mean? You're almost certain to lose at that point if you really think it's like 5%. So it was always too high, right? And I think that's just going to be standard every time when one person's coming in dominant. So yeah, things are looking a little better for her, but she's already starting to go down a little bit in Kalshi. I don't think the results in Oakland are what she would need to win. To me, that screams more like that's where we have 72% and she's winning by like 2%. I would have expected her to have to do better than that if she was going to win. That kind of says like something like 5 to 10% lead to me. It's only one part of the state, but.
And so Oakland County specifically, why did you think that she would need to do a bit better there? Because that is an important one since so much of the vote is in there with 73%.
Yeah, it's an area where she was outspending him a lot. It has some of the voters that she thinks she can be able to overperform with and win. And that's some of the analysis I just saw by some of the experts going into today too. So, primaries, it's a lot harder to map these things out, though. You're kind of just taking educated guesses unless you're literally on the campaign, seeing every piece of data, because these electorates shift so dramatically piece by piece and day by day compared to a general Democrat and Republican. So a lot of these end up becoming educated guesses rather than hard numbers.
Gotcha. Ryan, are you hearing anything from any of the campaigns about what is still outstanding for them? Oh, looks like we just got, let's see, what did we just get in? Because those numbers just tightened a lot. Did we get some Wayne County? Yes, we did. So now we've got 22% of Wayne County in, and now we have Haley Stevens up 66% to 30 in Wayne County. That is where Detroit is. So a really significant drop there and a large lead that she has taken there that pulls her to, less than a point with Abdul. What do you make of that? And now we've got about a third of the vote in.
Yeah, it's not good for news for Abdul Saeed. She's got a shot.
Yep. So let's see. Yeah, look much closer than much I'm trying to figure it. Logan, you know how many Democratic primary voters there were last time?
There is more primary voters, at least by mail and early. I think they set a record. I don't know if they have a full count on total yet. And
do we know if this is the if this is the bulk of the mail and early voting, and that's out of the way for him, that's probably pretty good. But it makes it a much closer race.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I hate to use the odds, the betting odds, but you can see them dropping in real time. Now it's at Abdul at roughly 82% likelihood of victory. So, you can see a major shift now. Yeah, it's still hovering around 82% is what that latest drop has done to the betting odds, at least. And I think the big question is, now we got a new drop in and he widened up to about a 3-point lead. Not sure where that came from, but the big question, like you're saying, Ryan, is what are those votes? Is that the early vote? Is it, the day of vote? What are they counting first? Because that certainly will make a big difference, because he's expecting to do comparatively better in the day of vote versus the early vote.
And presumably, like that, my understanding is that the early vote and the absentee vote are the ones that are counted first in Wayne County. So if that's the case, it would make sense that huge drop that came all at once, is basically that. Mm-hmm. And then if the rest are the trickling in kind of neck and neck totals that we saw, then he's still looking very good, because the rest of the state is understood to be much more pro El Sayed.
Yeah, and we've also got. Go ahead, Ryan.
No, go ahead.
We've also got a big shift in the 13th congressional district. That's with Donovan McKinney and Shri Thanadar. With him, Shri has now taken the lead there as well, with 27% of the vote in. It's 54 to 46. So again, makes a big difference for that race too.
Yeah.
What are those votes? Are those early votes? Are those day of votes? What is the mix there? Because that obviously will make a tremendous difference in that race as well.
Yep. So let me ask around here, but Logan, I'm trying to figure out how many Wayne County votes there were in 2024 in the primary. Let me look here.
All right.
So we've got looks like in 2024 you had 10,000 early votes, 140,000 absentee, 87,000 election day, 40,000 pre-process. Not sure what this means. So total about 200,000 votes in 2024. So that's a number. It was 195,000. So that's a number to keep in mind. So this is the 2024 Democratic primary. Now this is a much more competitive one.
Yeah, this should. I think it's very, very likely this will be the largest turnout ever for Senate primary.
So if you get a 25% increase, you're looking at 250,000 voters in Wayne County, which is, it's plausible. Let's say it's that. We're now at 60, right? 65,000. So there could be another 180,000 votes left out. And the fact that at this point in the night, El Sayed is counting votes, or I'm counting votes for El Sayed. It's not, not where he wanted to be. He wanted to be giving his victory speech by now.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So it looks like this is the mail. Let me put
Okay.
this up on the screen. So according to Vote Hub, Stevens plus 53 mail in Detroit. Danini says we have a race here. But so big question of, how did he perform mail versus day of? And, that'll be probably that will determine what happens here.
Right. But so we're not going to be looking at 30-point margins coming out of presumably we're not going to be looking at 30-point margins coming out of Wayne County from here on in.
Yep. And here's another piece of analysis here. Let me share. Same guy again. Grand Rapids City election day comes in big for El Sayed, but now that is done. Ann Arbor is done or close to done as well. Those are some of his best places. So El Sayed has his lead back, but his couple of his strongest areas are done. Dearborn does still remain. So some of the best places for El Sayed have basically already come in, is what he is saying there.
Yeah. Check in on our boy Will Lawrence. Up 11.
Well, and one thing that is extraordinary is the money does a lot. Because by all accounts from people on the ground, she really did have a campaign in the vast majority of the state. And that is part of where she is outperforming right now to make this thing, real nail biter, is in some of these more rural places. where I think he thought he would perform more strongly. So that's these are relatively small vote totals, couple thousand here, couple thousand there. But when you add it all together, that's also part of what's going on here.
There's also
it does look like the New York Times was reporting this, that his aggressive campaigning in some of the rural counties in northern Michigan, though, does seem to have paid off, where he's doing really well. So those sometimes get ignored as well. And if he does end up winning and it's by a close margin, it can end up being decisive.
In Will Lawrence's district, Michigan State University is in Ingham County. Lawrence is winning that by 35 points. That's not in yet. Only there's still a lot of that left, which is why I think the Lawrence campaign is pretty confident. But those are also like Michigan State University. That's also like, that's going to be hardcore Abdul El-Sayed turf as well. So that's another Abdul chunk that's still very much out there.
So in another race, by the way, in Kansas, we now have our Democratic nominee. It is Adam Hamilton, and it's another candidate that is a little bit like Tallarico or Warnock in that he talks in religious language more often. Tallarico is training to become an ordained minister. Adam Hamilton is a pastor, and he is doing a phenomenal job of raising money so far, especially for a state that's as red as that. He has 4.2 million raised already, compared to Marshall, who has 6.2. He's outraising him nearly 2-to-1 in terms of donations from actual individuals, excluding self-funding and PACs. And so my model views Kansas as a bit of a reach state. It's not a state the Democrats are going to win if it's a close Senate race nationally, but if they end up winning in a landslide, it's one of those, if you have one of those once in a generation races, it could flip, because this is kind of like a tertiary or 4-level state. It's been moving aggressively towards Democrats. It's just so red that it has a long way to go before it becomes truly competitive. Cook Report has a similar view. They just moved after he was nominated. I think they moved it to likely R from safe R. So one race worth watching now.
So I think another dynamic that is happening here is that the assumption that the early would be better for Haley and the day of would be better for Abdul has not held across the board. So that's part of why so many people are confidently saying, oh, it's going to be a 14-point or a 10-point or a double digit or an easy Abdul El-Sayed victory, are rethinking that now, because those dynamics have not been as consistent as has held for progressives in previous races. So that's another thing that is contributing to these very close results right now.
How do you, let's say he wins by 5 instead of 15. Do you think that changes like
the commentary?
The swagger? Yeah, the DSA swagger.
Yeah, but it would be absurd to. It shouldn't, but I think it will.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Logan. Just because, I mean, going in, every poll was like, Abdul by 19, Abdul by 10, Abdul by 14. And so if you undershoot expectations, then that gives the establishment hope that maybe if Haley had just been a little bit better of a candidate, that they could have dragged her across the finish line with all of their millions. So yeah,
just need another 10 million.
Just 10 more million and we could have done it. Or, or a candidate again who has a little bit more campaign appeal. I think that will change things significantly, especially because then you add to that Cori Bush going down pretty easily against Wesley Bell. And so they'll hold on to this and say that, it's the Democratic base isn't what you guys think that it is.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's kind of where I personally see things heading in the party. I think socialists are not going to become a huge part of the party and a very influential bloc. But I don't think anyone's going to steamroll over each other just because it's a two party country. And there's big coalitions that differ. Black voters don't really have anywhere to go with the Republican Party. And so they're by definition going to be more moderate because you have the full political spectrum there. So they might be the ascendant party. They might even become the majority. But I think you're still going to see different results in these races. And maybe more Mallory McMorrows than Haley Stevens in terms of what the center looks like.
So let me show you this. This is the breakdown in Detroit of absentee versus early versus election day. So you do see here, Haley blew out the absentee. The early vote was actually pretty even. The election day, though, Abdul is not winning, but it's much more narrow than the absentee vote. And that's probably, if that holds, that's probably a margin of difference, not actually doing math here because I'm not capable of it, but that seems like a difference, a margin that he would be able to withstand. What do you guys think?
I think you're onto something, and apparently we're sorry again to bring up the betting markets, but he just bumped up to 95%. So maybe people are doing similar math to you.
95%.
Yeah, there must be a drop that came in. So I'm not seeing it yet though in the New York Times.
Let's
so it's
see.
like 3.4. Maybe I missed it.
Yeah, if that absentee mail-in vote was just fundamentally different than what we're going to see, and we're going back to neck and neck Wayne County, then then he's in pretty good shape, because he's not only winning now, but he has what's outstanding outside of Wayne County is presumed to be leaning his way.
Right.
Okay, I can tell you what changed. The New York
Okay.
Times, they're not calling it the needle anymore, but they released something where it says, if you scroll down a bit, where candidates are on track in the reported vote. It's still early, they say, but in the counties that have reported enough votes, Abdul Saeed is ahead of their pre-election benchmarks by a 9% margin. These benchmarks reflect how we expect each county to vote in a close race.
Okay.
And they're the best. They're the best at this, I think, by far. I mean, they do an amazing job of making projections for primaries.
Interesting. So
Right.
they're saying he's outshooting his benchmarks by 9 points. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
It is ahead of his benchmarks by a 9-point margin in the counties that have reported enough votes. Okay. So there you go.
And I think by
Must be
benchmarks,
why.
they're not saying what people would expect. They're saying what they would expect if the race
What
was
he
tight, basically.
needs
They're not using
in
those
order
words,
to be able
but
to win.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
like
Donovan
5
McKinney
plus
has
1.
jumped back up in the odds as well. And let me see, Will Lawrence, how he is doing. Well, they had to make it dramatic. They got him at 96%. So somebody's feeling very
Okay.
confident about what remains in that race.
I know this. We're heading into the silly territory here, but does the swagger come back when it starts to
9
look like you
points?
could lose and you win by 9?
Yes, it does. I like that silver lining. This tightening of the race actually inures to Abdul's benefit in the long run when he does win by a significant margin.
I
so
also
is there-
think like
I mean,
Sure.
I do think double digits is kind of a marker, I think if he wins by
yeah,
10 or more, then that's like, all right, that was a walloping. Under 10, if you're in the 5 to 10 range, it's like, all right, you won well, easily, like pretty well. Under 5, and it's like, it's a bit of a nail biter.
I'm no Zoran Mamdani, but I don't think the messaging's too hard here. It's that we were outspent 10-1 and we won by 9. So like, regardless of how it might be framed, I mean, if you win by 1 vote and you're in that situation, I think it's pretty impressive personally.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I keep looking at the Donovan McKinney race, which again, right now with 27% of that, and that's a Detroit area district, with 27% of the vote in, Shri has a lead, but there's still a lot of confidence that Donovan is going to be able to pull that one off. So, you sort of look at that and extrapolate also to what's going on with Abdul. I think there might be some expectation that both of them perform better in the remaining vote there in Detroit. But I would love for them to count the votes and tell us what actually happened.
One day that will happen. One day it will happen.
Yeah, not going to happen anytime soon.
I got to do a show tomorrow.
Well, guys, be there. Get ready for Alaska.
Yeah, I'm going to be there for this block too.
This whole Senate could come down to Alaska in Election Day, and it won't be known on Election Day because if it's split, right? You got Mariupol that could easily be the deciding state, and we won't know for like 2 weeks. So this is just the beginning of the waiting process in paper in terms of what we'll have in the future.
I think we got Nathan J standing by, don't we?
Yeah, his old editor. Should we wrap this at 11:15? You want to call it at 11:15? What do you think?
Yeah, I support that. I gotta get some
we both
sleep.
have to
I'm
be
gonna
up
have some
early
bags
tomorrow.
under my eyes. I'm not a night person, guys, and I didn't have any extra caffeine because I didn't anticipate it going this late. Nathan J. Robinson, Current Affairs Magazine. Great to see you, sir.
Hey, Ryan.
He's always set mocking us, and wardrobe mocking us, and accent mocking us.
You know, this is the thing about socialists today. We, care about the aesthetics.
I need you, Nathan, to work on a New Orleans accent now that you're living there. Like, I'm giving you 5 years.
I don't think anyone wants to hear that.
Within 5 years, I want a thick New Orleans accent.
Can we put the two of them together though? Because I feel like that would be the move, right?
It's going to be a horrible abomination. You don't know what you're asking for. My voice is bad enough already.
So, would this be the first current affairs author to go to the Senate if he wins?
Yeah. No, so this is why this is a remarkable race for us here at Current Affairs, is that Abdul did YouTube videos for us and wrote a few articles for us back in the day. So this would be the first ever Current Affairs contributor to be nominated for a major party Senate seat.
How was he as a writer? I mean, I actually read his book, which was good.
Yeah, he's a solid writer. I mean, he's nice, and I mean, the same as he is as a politician, right? He's clear and to the point, and articulates the message very, very succinctly. Stays on message. I mean, he's got a very good talent for communicating progressive ideas in a tight way.
Yeah.
So.
I also feel like because we've been interviewing him since back 2018 Rising Days, which is so long ago.
Yeah, you were on him already too.
Yeah, but he's always been very talented and and I think an extraordinary person. But I also think that all of the public speaking that he's done, all of the writing that he's done, everything that he's done in the interim has really made him even more extraordinary of a candidate. You see it in some of his exchanges. He had an MS Now post sort of disappointed that he would condemn all like religious ethno states. And she was trying to get him on, oh, well, you care so much about Israel and aid to Israel. Why don't you care about any other places? And he immediately says, well, I do. And I talk about it. You just don't cover it. So with the implication being, maybe you're the one that's fixated on this particular thing. So I think that has really helped his development, his comfort, and his the fact that he's done so many interviews and made himself so accessible.
Yeah. But I mean, back in 2018, I went to Michigan, and I don't do much reporting, but I had a friend in Michigan, and so we have this candidate for governor who is a really remarkable guy who's got like Obama levels of charisma with Bernie Sanders politics. And I went out, and that was exactly how he struck me, is someone. And I just, I wrote this article going, this guy's something, because we've been waiting for someone who can articulate our values really, really effectively, and he's just so good at that. I mean, obviously he has to win this race, otherwise all of this can be set aside. So we don't actually yet know, but I mean, it is kind of remarkable that he's got to this point, considering the colossal amounts of money that were spent in that race to stop him.
Yeah, very true. What do you see as being at stake here, Nathan?
Well, I mean, it is the entire future of the Democratic Party, isn't it? Because if he wins the primary and wins in November, that will decisively refute the classic centrist argument that you have to run to the center to win in a swing state. That'll be shown to be untrue. If he wins the primary, and loses in November, that will reinforce the centrist argument. And they'll say, well, you should never have run anyone so radical. We told you, Haley Stevens was telling you she was the electable one. Of course, if Haley Stevens wins the primary and loses the general election, that will somewhat validate the progressive case. So, I mean, it really is a kind of interesting test case of the entire debate that is going on within the party right now, and whatever happens is going to be quite significant.
Nathan, I played earlier, I'm sure you saw, Mike Rogers already put together this AI slopified ad of like Abdul and the Trojan horse.
The Trojan horse.
Communism into Michigan. And I have Fox News on the TV here screen all night because whatever random streaming package we have, like that's the only, it's either that or like Newsmax or something. Anyway,
so
whatever.
Sorry. No wonder you look weary.
They've been doing socialism panic all night. Like this is clearly what they're going to be doing for the general election. And you know, if you look at the polling, the public does not have a favorable view of socialism. So do you think that this could work, that this could help to at least like mitigate the losses for Republicans? Or is this out of step with what the electorate actually wants to hear about, given the war, given the affordability crisis and their other concerns?
I don't know, because if Abdul wins this primary, we are in very uncharted waters. And I would have been very interested to have the answer to that in 2016 if Bernie was nominated. Like, would the socialism smear have stuck? I thought at the time that Bernie had a pretty good response to that Bernie would give if it's socialism, to believe that everybody should be guaranteed health care and paid family leave, you know, they call me a socialist, but these are the things I stand for. I think Abdul is being underestimated. Those polls against Mike Rogers can't account for what Abdul's strategy is vis-a-vis Mike Rogers, which is that he said he is going to, by the end of the race, make everyone associate in their minds Mike Rogers with corporate shill and opioid epidemic, right? Because Mike Rogers was one of the most favorable to the drug industry during his time in Congress. He pushed to loosen limits on opiates, and he took a lot of donations from them. So Abdul says he's going to run on that. He's going to run, Mike Rogers helped destroy your communities. I was a health director. I helped keep those communities safe. Now, and you could call me a communist because you've got nothing. You've got nothing. That's why you're doing this. And I thought Abdul's response to that ad was quite effective. But we don't know if it's going to work. I suspect that if Mike Rogers thinks that Abdul is going to be easy to beat, he is significantly underestimating his opponent, because as we have all seen in our time covering Abdul, and as we've just said here, Abdul is very, very formidable, very, very smart. But whether the shouting the word socialism and Islamist takeover is going to work in a general election, I don't know. We would find out.
Yeah. Let me share this. I don't know how legit these people are, but they're making a race call, so we're gonna put it up here. Interactive Polls says that they're calling the race for DSA member and Bernie-backed William Lawrence in the Democratic primary in Michigan's 7th congressional. He'll face Republican incumbent Tom Barrett in November. Ryan, you know more about this district than I do, but this is kind of a, Tom Barrett's kind of vulnerable, relatively swing seat, especially in a year when Republicans aren't expected to do particularly well. Will Lawrence was a co-founder of Sunrise Movement. He's very steeped in the ideology. He's very, sort of solid progressive here, and has also really centered a lot of his campaign around opposition to data centers, which I think also could have a major general election appeal. We've seen the polling show that it's a cross ideological concern, really, whether you're polling Democrats, Republicans, or independents.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'll call it too, because the county with Michigan State University still only has a third of the votes in, and he's up by 13 points. So his lead is probably only going to grow at this point. But we're going to test whether a Sunrise co-founder who they're going to tag as a leftist can beat a Republican in a kind of suburban Michigan district. And maybe in a normal year you couldn't, but with people enormously frustrated at the war, and enormously frustrated, in particular at the data center explosion in this area, with him taking a hard stand on it. I think it leans in his direction. During the campaign, the hit that the super PACs were taking on Will Lawrence was that Will Lawrence claims to be a progressive, claims to be against big tech, but he's actually in the pocket of big tech because he has investments with big tech companies. When you looked, it was the footnote went to a 401k he had that had something like $15,000 in it that was invested in index funds, which themselves had some holdings in, like, Apple, Amazon, all the major companies that any 401k mutual fund has. So that was one attempt that they had, but it kind of twisted themselves up a nuts, kind of thing, because it showed like, oh, he says he's against big tech. Okay, cool. So yeah, this and the Randy Vegas race out in California, which the DCCC lost. They didn't want. If you remember Randy Vegas, he's a Bakersfield Community College professor who is also an auto mechanic. Has the support of like Justice Democrats and kind of the left. He's also trying to oust a Republican, and so
I think he's going to win that race.
You think he will? Yeah.
My model says 81%. I mean, I think the polling's been pretty good for him. I'm surprised it's that high, but I say I'm surprised because it's all data.
You're talking about Villegas?
Yeah. Between the polling and the fundraising, I mean, there's some good signs for him.
So those two races, plus then Maine and Troy Jackson in Maine, and then Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan. This is what the left has been asking for, is a shot at the Republicans to show that their brand of populism is actually also electable.
Let me just to underscore that, let me just go ahead and play one of these Will Lawrence ads, so people, if they haven't seen him or seen our incredible interview with him, they can get a sense of what his vibe is and what he's been talking about on the trail.
I'm Will Lawrence, and tech billionaires want to turn this whole field into a massive data center that'll jack up our energy bills and ruin our home values.
They put that in, it's going to plummet the values. It's an existential threat.
I'm running for U.S. Congress because I've never been afraid to stand up to corporate power. I'm backed by Bernie Sanders, and I don't take a dime from corporate PACs.
Will Lawrence isn't going to let us be bullied by a big corporation.
I'm Will Lawrence, and I approve this message.
So what do you think of that, Nathan?
Well, yeah. I mean, we know that the data center issue really resonates. It's kind of handed progressives an issue that, 2-3 years ago we didn't know we had. Previously, obviously, the big things that people like Bernie were talking about were healthcare, college, and you add AI and data centers to that list, and you really have something that works on ordinary people because it's got multiple fit. There's the fear of the data centers in particular, and which speaks also to the lack of democracy. People don't feel like they have any input into where these things are going. It's an environmental issue. It's a jobs issue because everyone feels like they're going to be replaced with AI, and they're being sort of the subject of these, these market forces that they have no control over. So it turns out to be an excellent issue for speaking to people's concerns. There's something that's just handed to people by this technological development that no one really anticipated.
And I think for Will in particular, because he has that background in the environmental movement, it feels very authentic to him as well. And I'm curious for your view, Nathan. I actually don't know what your thoughts are on AI, where you are on it's a bubble. It doesn't, it's not going to be transformative. It is transformative, but it is a bubble spectrum. Data centers are kind of, the front line of the opposition because it's so visible in people's communities. But, how do you think that this issue will develop for people, especially socialists moving forward?
Yeah, you're asking me a very hard question because I don't like to predict the future on something that's really unprecedented, right? I mean, I do think that there was a strand of thinking on the left for a while that kind of understated the capacities of AI that I think is wrong, right? I think it's pretty clear that these technologies can do a lot, that they have the potential to replace a lot of jobs, and that we should, in fact, be very worried about how they'll be integrated into the economy. How resonant the issue is going to be kind of depend. I mean, I don't know. It really kind of depends the degree to which these technologies are actually causing people tangible harm, and then the response that's put together by progressive politicians. Do you have something that actually addresses what these things are doing in people's lives? If they're making everybody's lives easier by organizing all of their information, and they don't really see what the problem with AI is. But I think it's become clear that the public perception of AI is like mostly that it's not going to be good for us. Mostly people are afraid of it, skeptical of it, worried that it's going too fast and that it's going to upend our lives. So to me, it seems like a winning issue for those who are AI skeptical. And you see a lot of Republicans getting on this bandwagon too now. After previously the Trump administration was very, very pro AI, very, very like full speed ahead, no regulations. They backed off on that quite a lot.
Nathan, another topic that we've been tracking all night, of course, is the impact of Israel on these races and the way it's served as a litmus test. And in particular, how with Abdul, they made Hassan Piker a specific litmus test here.
Oh my God,
and,
the Hassan discourse. Yeah.
And I'm curious what you've made of that and how significant that you think that has been to this race and others, because, obviously I think Abdul was one of the first to actually have him come and do a rally for him. Hassan has been traveling all around to these different candidates and really lending his voice and his support to candidates he believes in, and putting his own sort of political capital on the line. So what do you make of the Hassan Piker dividing line in the Democratic Party?
It's hard to say what effect Hassan Piker has one way or the other. I mean, I know that Abdul's polls got better after Hassan campaigned with him the first time and drew some attention. But of course, there's all this negative backlash that is not worth dealing with. Abdul clearly feels that it's to his advantage to have Hassan Piker's energy and his audience. I mean, the fact that he was campaigning with him on the last day of the primary suggests that, in his judgment at least, that association was not doing him any harm, and he kind of welcomed any scrutiny or criticism. The Israel thing kind of cut both ways, of course, because on the one hand, this fact of Abdul's stance on Israel and his closeness to left Palestine activists is what caused so much AIPAC money to flow into the race against him, and what caused them to fund tens of millions of dollars in attack ads, not on the issue of Israel, but calling him a misogynist who disrespects women. On the other hand, that spending all seemed to backfire in a certain way, because it became central to his pitch that he was trying to get money out of politics. In every speech, he says, well, if you want to look at what money in politics does, just have a look at what they're doing to me right now. I'm sure you've seen all these ads. Look at the tens of millions of dollars that are being spent to stop me. They're trying to stop me because of what I stand for. And that helped him make his case. Now, which of these factors ends up being more significant, right? Whether it's the AIPAC spending that ultimately puts Haley Stevens over the top, or whether it's the backlash to the AIPAC spending that ultimately drives support for Abdul. Well, we're gonna find out which of those. Hopefully, in a few hours, we're gonna find out which of those prevailed.
I'm gonna put the results back up on the screen just so we can take a look at where things are, because things have been. I mean, it's more or less the same, but Abdul's opened up a little bit more, closer to a 4-point lead here, as some things have been coming in. We're now at 41% of the vote. A little bit of a tick up in the vote from Wayne County, which is where Detroit is. We're now at 26%. Last time I think we checked in was at 23%.
Oh, it just went to plus 20. Like 2
what went to
ago.
plus 20? Oh, the
Wayne.
oh, so what does that tell? What are you noting there, Logan?
No, it's just going down. I mean, it's hard for me to say with too much precision, but it's a positive for him that it's going
Yeah,
down
so
over time.
what we were looking for was, she seems to be performing best in the absentee vote in particular, not just the early vote, but specifically the absentee vote. And so the question was if that has already come in and then you have a lot of election day vote where he wouldn't be winning, but he would, the margin would be narrower, that would benefit him. So it does look like that may be what is happening here. And meanwhile, some other things are coming in. There's one other thing that I wanted to show people just to give them a sense of, what where the population centers are in Michigan. So you can see here this is the the size of the vote in these various places. So you can see that Detroit, Ann Arbor, Grand Rapids, like these are the big population centers that are really going to matter the most in terms of where their votes are going to come from. Detroit being the strongest area for Stevens, and then Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids both being strong for Abdul. So that is what we've got right now. I can also take a look at, we're getting a little bit more vote in. Let me see if we got any more from Detroit. No, it doesn't look like it. Wanted to take a look at the 13th district. Let me pull this one up on the screen. This is Donovan McKinney and Shri Thanadar, 27% of the vote in. Shri maintains about a 7.5 point lead. So again, this is one where the expectation is perhaps Donovan will perform better and actually win the election day vote. And that perhaps Shri, like Haley Stevens, really overperformed in the absentee vote that is in so far. So that is what we know at this point.
I have one tiny, it's hard to explain exactly what's going on here, but from what I heard from those I know on the ground who are working for Abdul, what they found was the people who had already voted absentee, especially in Detroit, a lot of them had only seen the TV ads against Abdul. And in the last couple of weeks, Abdul's organizers, his door knockers, were on the ground trying very hard to counter the effects of those ads. And we're having a lot of success in countering those effects through all of the interaction. They knocked a ton of doors. They had a pretty formidable operation. But what they were finding was a lot of people had already voted absentee. And those people were quite hostile to Abdul because they hadn't heard anything other than the mailers, the ubiquitous Facebook ads, which I don't know if they've even been talked about, but the United Democracy Project spent, I think, millions of dollars with specifically targeted Facebook ads to basically every Democrat in Michigan. All of them had Abdul disparage Michelle Obama on them over and over, and they were just getting fed into people's feeds just constantly for months.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people in focus groups say things like, "Oh, I know he said something sexist. I don't remember what it is, but it was a bad thing." And a lot of voters aren't thinking that much about the details in the primary, and they like Michelle Obama, and they're not looking into the full comment. That stuff's powerful.
Yeah.
I see one analyst, just Brian, real quick, saying that the absentee drop from Wayne was only from the city of Detroit, doesn't include the Arab and suburban towns from the county itself. So another important note there.
I think we can close out in a second. Sam Robinson's going to come back in to finish up. But we've got a good David Axelrod Van Jones fight about AIPAC. Do you want to watch this for a minute?
Let's do it.
Love it.
Give it to us.
Interest group spending, say a word about that, because we've talked about this before, and I speak as you know, as the son of a Jewish refugee, so issues of anti-Semitism are very personal to me. I think that what you see in Michigan is a interest group spending $30 million. She's got $64 million in television spending, and they're responsible for at least half of that. And one of the issues, as Kristen mentioned, that people are grappling with is the power of money in our politics, the influence that interest groups have. And I think it's a legitimate question. Should a should essentially an agent of any foreign government, whether it's Israel or any other, be able to spend, is it healthy for them
Van
to
Jones
spend
isn't gonna like that.
$30 million in a race like this to influence the outcome of that race? I think that's a legitimate issue.
Look, well, I mean, I get your point. I don't think that they're an agent of foreign power. I think they're American Jews, as you said.
Their mission is to support the policies of the Israeli government.
Well, I think their issue is to protect Israel, but you have to ask
No. But Van, read what they're.
I'm happy to be corrected by you, but I also like to make my own point, which is that why is AIPAC going after this guy? That would be the question. They're spending, what you said, $30 million? That's a lot of money. Is it because he's a Muslim guy? Is it because he's a hateful guy? It turns out his position is for a full military embargo of the state of Israel. Now, hold on a second. A full military embargo. Now, listen, if he says he wants condition aid, that's reasonable, defensible. Most Democrats feel that way at this point after Gaza. If he says no subsidies, that's defensible. He says we can't even sell weapons to Israel, even if they're defensive. So if this guy, so why is AIPAC so mad? This guy is saying that the United States government can't even sell defensive weapons to Israel, which would make Israel completely defenseless. Now, that would be a reason for a group of people who cares about Israelis to say, this is not our guy.
So, Van, can I just say this? And Haley Stevens ran in 2022 after her district was redistricted. She ran against Andy Levin.
Yeah, Andy Levin.
And Andy Levin, his position was that aid to Israel should be conditional on not pursuing policies that would subvert a two-state solution there. That would be considered a mainstream position now by many people. They spent millions of dollars to defeat him. They spent millions of dollars this year to defeat Tom Malinowski, who said, I can't guarantee that I will support every funding position. So I take your point, but this is...
Yeah, not much. It kind of just shows how bankrupt the argument is. I mean, Axelrod's good.
He won't even sell weapons to a genocidal state.
How dare he?
I didn't understand how he starts out. They're not supporting the government of Israel, but then by the end of it, he's like, it's all about the government of Israel. That was also a little bit odd.
Well, have him on. Have you asked him on?
Who, Van?
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Chris,
that's actually a good idea.
Grillings. Give him an Alyssa Slotkin.
That would be fun. I think people would enjoy that. Yes. We'll reach out. It's a good idea. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing with AIPAC is they love to play this, oh, this isn't foreign, it's Jewish Americans, and how dare you, and you just hate Jewish people, blah, blah, blah. But then if you ask them the question, okay, name one AIPAC position that does not just mirror whatever Benjamin Netanyahu wants today, and they can't. It's all just about being lockstep with the Israeli government wants, which, you know, is not even really consistent with protecting Israel or whatever it is that Van Jones put out there. So I just have to reflect, though, on the fact that to have David Axelrod making this case on, you know, primetime election night on CNN is a sea change. Like our jaws would have been on the floor to hear this analysis from Axelrod just a couple years ago.
Well, you probably had the same reaction that I did when you saw Rahm Emanuel saying, "Oh yeah, I think we probably need to stop weapons aid to Israel." You go, "Oh, okay." The Palestine movement has had major success in shifting the ground of democratic public opinion, and these guys feel a lot of pressure to adjust themselves accordingly. Because I mean, David Axelrod's a smart guy, and he knows which way the wind's blowing.
See, I think it's more than that person with Axelrod. I mean, look, I'm biased. He's one of my favorite. He's written one of my favorite political books ever. But I think Axe has always had a big heart. This has been a harder issue for him to get to the right place on. But I think it has more to just do with the mass atrocities against Palestine. I think it just got too much for him.
I mean, he would be like
also, he has
many others if that was the case.
And he had plenty of scars from AIPAC in the White House. You know, they...
True.
Yeah, Netanyahu called him a self-hating Jew.
Yeah, Netanyahu came and addressed Congress over the objection of Obama without asking. He lobbied against Obama's nuclear deal. Those is just the high level things. Like they were snubbing him constantly. It's a mess. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm here at the IBEW Local 58 Union Hall. It is a place in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood where political activity is happening all the time. And tonight, Rashida Tlaib, Donovan McKinney, Abraham Ayash. I've seen also Malat Kairos, Chris Rabb here. Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist is here. I just left the Abdul watch.
Yeah, how are they? And we're gonna wrap soon. As I mentioned, thank you for closing us out here. What was the mood at? How nervous are the Abdul folks as the race was tightening? Oh, somebody, either you just muted yourself or somebody muted him.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry, go ahead. Nope.
Oh, no,
one more
we're
time.
not hearing you. They're saying need to refresh. All right, we'll hopefully get him back in a minute because, yeah, I want to hear the answer to that question too. How are they feeling as they're watching this come in?
And still waiting for a lot of results for the races we were talking about earlier. Although it looks like a bunch of those races that dropped site wrote about the insurgent candidate is in the lead. But it's just too early to tell.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Awesome. Yeah. Abdul supporters are nervous. It's not the doom and gloom that I think I felt about 8:30, 9:30 at the Haley Stevens event. I think I might have left Haley Stevens right about 9. And the mood in the room of about 35, 40 people was, very nervous. And it was a mood of unification.
Wait, how many people?
About 40 people. I mean, I tried to count one by one.
I'm sorry.
About 40 people that were in the room. I have not been there in a couple of hours, about an hour and a half now. So there could have been more people that showed up, but I'm being told that press is actually being penned away. They allowed some press to talk to supporters. I actually asked Haley's comms director, like, hey, are we going to be able to talk to people? And it took her a few minutes to get back to me, like, yeah, we got to wait till 8:30.
Nothing says more about a campaign than if you had more millions of dollars spent on your campaign than you had people show up to your party. She had 60 plus million spent on her, and 40 people show up to her party.
Right. Did you see the Slate piece where the reporter said he was shocked because she used the sit down she had with the reporters and posted it to look like it was her talking to voters?
Amazing.
Oh my goodness.
It's been interesting to watch. Yeah, I mean, the campaign has had some lapses in terms of vetting. You guys remember watching that community leader in Woodbridge, Jay Singletary, confront Representative Stevens over her support of Israel. I mean, how did they let that happen, right? And so it's been interesting to watch the campaign sort of navigate their unpopularity with the public. Of course, they didn't really do public events in the same way that Abdul al-Sayed did. But of course, the whiter, more rural voters in Michigan are sort of confirming the assumptions of a lot of the Stevens supporters. They're telling us, hey, Abdul is not electable in November. We are seeing a closer than we thought results as they come in. So, I always thought that this race was going to be close. I didn't really think there was going to be a double-digit spread. We could be heading into the morning without getting a result from this race. It does still seem like Abdul al-Sayed is in good shape. It's going to come down to Wayne County, man. It really might come down to the black voters in and around Wayne County, Dearborn Heights. The Arab Muslim vote is also going to come into play.
Yeah, Sam, talk a little bit about that. I can tell you, I'll just go ahead and throw up the results one more time here so we can see them. Where we are at right now, we've got Abdul with a little bit more than a 3-point lead. This is with 44% of the vote in. And those Wayne County numbers haven't moved much in a while. We're at 26% of the vote there. Everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath to see.
And look at that Mallory McMurrow number. I mean, the fact that she stayed on the ballot is going to end up impacting the result. Today, she was talking to media members. Her husband, his name is Ray Wirt. On Instagram, I asked Mallory after she posted about 8 minutes later on Instagram that she had gone and voted. I said, "Who'd you guys vote for?" Ray Wirt said in a comment reply, their daughter's mom, and then he deleted the reply. And so I do think there's a fair amount of people, you're right, I do think there's a fair amount of people that voted for Mallory McMurrow because they just did not like Haley or Abdul.
And who do you think that benefits that she was still on the ballot? Because it seemed like her voters were fairly split.
You know, it really did. You know, I talked to a few people early on as soon as she left that told me that they were supporting Abdul El-Sayed. It did seem like some of her, you know, frankly, some of the people that worked on her campaign were more friendly to El-Sayed's campaign. I can tell you that a lot of the people that are close to Mallory hate Abdul. A lot of people in Michigan politics do. And so you're going to see that if he's the nominee, it's going to be some real trepid support from people like Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who he called bought and sold when he ran against her in 2018 as a gubernatorial candidate.
Interesting.
Yeah. And is there anything to some of these rumors that like they had a very tense kind of personal couple interactions? Like what do you know about their relationship?
Yeah.
And how will that influence the general?
You know, I'm not sure. I do think Governor Whitmer's, not just her endorsement, but her inclusion in advertisements that we saw today and yesterday. I mean, she gave a, you know, go vote on or before August 4th for Haley Stevens. You know, Whitmer is less popular than she was with Democrats, but depends where and who you're asking. And she remains a very popular figure within the Democratic Party and certainly the leader of Michigan Democrats. I mean, it is going to be a test. Of course, if Haley Stevens wins, you know, we're going to hear folks really ask and probe Abdul El-Sayed and his supporters, are you going to support Haley Stevens as the nominee?
There was a section in a drop site report by Tom Perkins. You know Tom Perkins, Michigan reporter?
Yeah, I've been to a couple parties where he's at. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Small state maybe. But so he had a line, but I wanted to get your take on it as a reporter for, is it the Michigan Advance? Is that the so he writes, one recent poll shows El-Sayed behind in Detroit 66-33. Part of this may be the conservative older population, and tensions exist between Black people and Arab Americans in Detroit, which in part stems from anger with gas station, party store, and grocery store owners in the city who are largely Chaldean, kind of Iraqi, and are accused of mistreating their mostly Black customers. What do you what is the background there? How would you judge that kind of rather blanket statement about those tensions?
It's again, it's a generational thing. I do think a lot of younger folks that live in the neighborhoods experience the mistreatment or just disrespectful behavior. I mean, I experience it myself, you know. I mean, and I'm pretty nice to everyone. But yeah, I mean, there's tension that exists among our communities, Wayne County.
So like if you're at a gas station or something like that, like the owner.
Well, you think about low income folks that are just loitering outside of the store or buying Lucy cigarettes or whatever. I mean, the tropes are the stereotype. Yes, you can imagine. You know, Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing" come to life on 7 Mile and Outer Drive in Detroit. So there are tensions that exist. I mean, the Wayne County government, it's the Black establishment saying, oh, the Arabs are going to take over Wayne County. And the Arabs will say whatever anti-Black thing that they'll say about Detroit's majority. I mean, we're 77% Black. We were an 85% Black city 15 years ago. And so people are really frustrated that we do not have a Black person representing them in Congress. Of course, Donovan McKinney could unseat incumbent U.S. Rep. Shri Tanadar for Michigan's 13th district. You know, I've seen the results. People at the Abdul rally, the watch party are cheering every time CNN shows those results. I don't know what the percentage of votes in yet. But it is going to be a long night, I would imagine. And it seems like there's one group of people having fun right now. It didn't seem like the energy was all that high at the Haley Stevens rally, albeit I have not been there since she's been making these gains. I do think, her camp is squarely still in this. They don't believe that it's over. They don't believe that, people were kind of dooming and glooming when these polls were coming out. And I kept saying, polls do not vote. Always close elections in Michigan. We don't really usually have blowouts.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well,
but
living up to that
there is,
reputation for
yeah, there is, as you Tom Perkins mentioned, a sentiment of xenophobia and Islamophobia that exists within Detroit's Black establishment and among the seniors.
Interesting. Yeah, and we got a little taste of that with that one individual. All right, guys. Well, let me put the results up one last time, and then we'll wrap out of here with what we know at this point. Close race. You'd still rather be Abdul than be Haley. He's according to the New York Times beating his benchmarks by around 6 points. Right now he's got about a 3.5 point edge here with roughly half of the vote in at this point. One last check on Detroit, still sitting at 27% in terms of overall Wayne County vote. So, Sam, I think we'll let you stay up for that one. Nathan, any last thoughts from you on the night as we close out here and what you're seeing and what it means?
Well, I just reiterate that that this has been and is going to be a pretty extraordinary and important race. It's interesting to see the national media sort of catch on to the fact that so many threads of the last 10 years of American politics since Bernie won Michigan in 2016, and since Bernie's supporters back then were arguing that this proved that he was the stronger general election candidate against Trump, and Hillary Clinton's supporters were arguing, no, she's the safe choice. And in fact, we know that a lot of people in 2016 didn't vote for Bernie Sanders because or they said that they didn't think he could win in November. And those of us on the left were always making the case, we totally misunderstand American politics. Actually, this is the perfect antidote to Trumpism. We have to throw out the Democratic establishment because they're weak and unpopular, and they are the ones who don't know how to win elections. And I'm just very interested to see one of these progressive candidates win in a state like Michigan, just to finally test this theory. If Abdul wins, and then he loses the general election, those of us who have been making this case for 10 years are going to have a little bit to answer for. So it's going to be pretty fascinating to get this really, really clear contrast, very similar to the contrast between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, except this time you're going to have the Sanders wing of the party running, and what's going to happen. And I have no idea. I have my theory of politics, which is that Abdul al-Sayed would be very effective against Mike Rogers, but I don't know the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, Nathan Robinson, Current Affairs, Sam from Michigan Chronicle, right? And then the Substack is what? Sam, what's your, he's muted again.
Well, if you can find him, Sam Robinson on Twitter,
he's got his.
Yes, Michigan Chronicle, Michigan's oldest black newspaper. Shout out to us.
Go.
Shout out to Detroit, Michigan. We
Substack,
appreciate all the people across the country watching. My Substack is Detroit 1 million.
That's right.
There you go.
Thank you guys.
Detroit 1 million. And then Logan Phillips, of course, Race to the White House. Thank you guys all so much. And thank you guys out there for watching. Sorry that it's a cliffhanger. I was hoping we would know by this point, but I think it's going to be a very late night. Detroit is taking their time with these ballot drops. And so it remains about a 3.5 point margin and no movement in terms of Wayne County. So anything else, Ryan, you got before we dip out of here?
Nope, that's all I got. It's gonna be close, and we'll see you guys in the morning. We'll both be on.
Hopefully, we'll have results in the morning. Ryan and I will both be there alongside Emily to parse what is going on in the state of Michigan and across the country. So thank you guys, and we'll see you then.